We are live.
Good morning, everyone. This meeting will now come to order. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Durham Historic Preservation Commission on this 6th day of April, 2021. My name is Matt Bouchard, and I am chair of the commission. This commission is a quasi-judicial board of record, and as such, all testimony will be recorded. Under this procedure, our meeting today will also be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. The proceedings of this board are governed by the zoning laws as recorded. As such, please note the steps we have taken to ensure that each party's due process rights are protected as we proceed in this remote platform today. First, today's meeting will be conducted in accordance with the statutes enacted in Session Law 2020-3 and codified at the North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 166A, Section 19.24, which allows for remote meetings and quasi-judicial hearings during declarations of emergency. Second, each applicant on today's agenda was notified before being placed on the agenda that this meeting would be conducted using a remote electronic platform. Every applicant on today's agenda has consented to the board conducting the evidentiary hearing on their request using this remote platform. We will also confirm today at the start of each evidentiary hearing that the participants in the hearing consent to the matter proceeding in this remote platform. If there is any objection to a matter proceeding in this remote platform, that case will be continued. Third, notice of this meeting was provided to the applicants and to the public in multiple ways, including signage posted on site, notification letters mailed to all adjacent property owners, informing recipients regarding the remote platform, and a general announcement via the Commission's website, informing the public of the same. The notices for today's meeting advise the public on how to access the remote meeting as the meeting occurs. Individuals wishing to participate in today's evidentiary hearings were required to register prior to the meeting. Information about this registration requirement, along with information about how to sign up to participate, was included in the mailed notice letter sent to each adjacent property owner. This information was also included on the board's website. The public was advised to contact the city immediately in case of objection to the evidentiary hearing to the remote meeting platform. I do not believe that city staff has received any objection to any matter being heard in this remote meeting platform. Is that correct? Hearing no objection, I'll move forward. All individuals participating in today's evidentiary hearings were also required to submit a copy of any presentation, document, exhibit, or other material they wish to submit at the evidentiary hearing prior to today's meeting. All materials that the city received from the participants in today's cases, as well as a copy of city staff's presentations and documents, were posted online prior to this meeting. The agenda and all materials to be discussed today may be viewed at any time during today's meeting by visiting the web link for today's agenda via Durham's Agenda Center. Finally, all individuals who registered to participate in an evidentiary hearing on today's agenda, as well as all city staff participants, were emailed a witness oath and consent to a remote hearing form prior to today's meeting. Any individual planning to testify or submit evidence in an evidentiary hearing today was notified that they must sign the oath form prior to today's meeting. We will also reaffirm everyone's oath on the record at today's meeting. Are there any members of this board that would have any conflicts of interest with regard to the cases before us today?
Just for the record, in regards to COA 2100014-162 West Ramsey Street, I am an employee of the Crest building, so it is next door to me. And then I've also worked with pretty much every entity involved in that project at some point or another throughout my career. But to the best of my knowledge, Stuart doesn't have any financial interest in this project moving forward. And after talking with the city attorney's office, it seems like I don't have a conflict of interest, but I just want that on the record that those circumstances are in fact true.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Anybody else? Are there any early dismissals being requested today?
Good morning, sir. This is Wanda Waiters, and I have an early dismissal request for 10:30.
Thank you, Commissioner Waiters, 10:30. Anybody else? As chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, I'd like to remind everyone that our quasi-judicial hearings function similar to a court proceeding. Staff will first present an overview of the case, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to present their evidence. Opponents, if there are any, may then present their evidence, and the applicant may then present a rebuttal. Board members will refrain from questions or comments until each speaker has completed his or her presentation. Testimony should consist of facts each witness knows directly, not hearsay. Evidence already presented need not be repeated. All witnesses who have signed up in advance will be given the opportunity to speak, and their testimony will be recorded. The board will vote on each case after the presentation of all evidence, pro and con, concerning the case. All decisions of this board are subject to appeal to the Board of Adjustment and then to the Durham County Superior Court. Madam Clerk, could we please have the attendance taken of the commissioners who are here today?
Yes. Chair Pritchard.
Here.
Okay, and Commissioner Dayan asked for an excused absence, so he is not going to be here today. Commissioner DeBerry.
Here.
Commissioner Fieselman.
Here.
Vice Chair Goolsby.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Krager. See him on here. And Commissioner Waiters.
Commissioner Waiters here.
Thank you all. Commissioners, you have been forwarded an agenda for today's meeting. Would anyone, including city staff, like to recommend any adjustments to that agenda?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. No adjustments, please.
Okay. Commissioners, you have also been provided draft minutes for our last commission meeting, which was held on this same remote platform back on March the 2nd of this year. Does anyone have any adjustments to the draft minutes that they would like to recommend?
So when I go to the portal, it actually says the February 2nd meeting, and it talks about me being chair. So I don't know if it's not the right one published to the agenda center, or it says March 2nd on the title, but then when you get into it, it doesn't.
And I think those are previous cases also.
Is it possible that the wrong set of minutes got included? I'm asking Ms. Elliott or Ms. Rosenberg. I'm not sure. Oh, Terry, you're on mute. Oh, I have March 2nd. I don't know why I'm on mute. I can't unmute it. We can hear you now. I think they're saying that the minutes say March 2nd, but they have cases from the month before. So I'm not sure. We can look into that and maybe circle back at the end of the meeting. Would that be okay? Yeah. Okay.
That is fine by me.
Okay. Sorry about that mix up. We'll try to sort that out.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please swear in all city staff that will be presenting today's cases?
Yes. Do you members of staff swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceedings for today's cases is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
Grace Smith, I do. Carla should be on the line.
Yeah.
I think she's coming up.
Yeah, Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department, I do.
Is that everybody today? Okay, well, with that, I believe we are ready to proceed with our first case on today's docket. This is case COA 21-00008, 709 Shepard Street, new construction of accessory structure, continued from March 2, 2021 meeting. Before we hear from staff, is there anyone of our commissioners who may have a conflict of interest in hearing this case? If not, then let us proceed with the swearing in of anyone who plans to speak for this case.
Is this truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
I think we lost the participant. Bear with me. Okay, there. I apologize, Chair. They didn't come over. Bear with us 1 second.
Okay.
Here they are.
If we could,
I don't think they heard the oath, so if you could re-administer the oath, please.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceedings for today's case is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
Yes.
Yes.
and Mr. Kopak and Ms. Bota, do you consent to this hearing being conducted via this virtual platform today?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we may proceed with the staff summary.
Good morning, Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. I apologize for having some technical issues. This is case COA 21-00008, 709 Shepard Street, new construction of an accessory structure. The applicant, James Kupok, the owner, Nicole Vota, located on the east side of Shepard Street between Jackson and Yancey Streets. Zoned residential urban 5 duplex, and it is a contributing structure or contributing property to the Morehead Hill Historic District. So this is a case that was initiated at the last, at the March Preservation Commission meeting. So this is a continued case that has been revised. So you'll see the new revised proposal in your packets. So I'd like to introduce this revision into the record and resume a review of this case.
Mr. Kopak or Ms. Vota, the floor is yours.
Sure. Okay, so at the conclusion of the last meeting, we were, I think, I don't want to say assigned, but we were given advised on a few directives to take to revise our application. The first revisions that you'll come to on pages 11 and 12, as suggested by committee member April, are to have gone out in the community and sort of do an investigation of comparable ADUs in Durham. To that extent, on pages 11 and 12, which should be the next 2 pages after this site plot, the ADUs circled or boxed in red are the ones that we thought most similarly represented the ADU that we are proposing to construct, based on the comments that we received in the last meeting. with regard to our revision to our proposed building, the building has become smaller in size. From a footprint standpoint, it has been reduced in height to some extent. And we've also changed the fenestrations, which I believe summarize the primary concerns with the previous version of the application. If you would look at pages 13 and 14, there were also concerns related to us about the visibility of the proposed ADU from the street. And to the extent possible, we have overlaid views from Google Maps and our architectural program on what this ADU may look like at the current property. And I think from our perspective, I believe it appears to be
just trying to demonstrate that it sits like down the hill. So you really wouldn't see as much of it as like you do in just like the drawing.
I suppose, I think that we've addressed some of the major comments here, but I'm obviously happy to answer any specific questions that you all have in relation to how this application has changed since last month.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions for the owner or applicant before we ask to hear from others?
Carla, can you scroll down to the new building design? The COA is not loading for me, nor did I get it in the mail. Thank you. Okay, great, thanks.
I'll ask one question concerning the pictures. And we certainly appreciate your efforts to find comparable accessory dwelling units in the city. Do any of these pictures represent ADUs found in the Morehead Hill Historic District?
So I would direct your attention to the first picture on the top left column where the page reads ADU comps. This structure is on Proctor Street, just south of Morehead Avenue, which I believe is the only one which is contained within Morehead Hill. The others, which may be a part of Morehead Hill or the Forest Hills neighborhood that I would direct your attention to, is the picture that is adjacent to that one, which is, you can see the gray gable structure. It's the middle column right side, or sorry, middle row right side on that same page. And then similarly, the Morehead Manor bed and breakfast on the third row left column. Those are potentially within the historic overlay of Morehead Hill. I'm not familiar with the exact land boundaries of Morehead Hill, so I can't say whether or not they're part of this overlay, but those are the ones that are inside the neighborhood.
Yeah, for reference, we took all of these pictures like on a walk in our neighborhood. And we saw a lot that had like similar to the style we were proposing with the like little A-frame and then like the big bump outs. So while they may, like I said, we're not 100% sure which ones are historic and which ones are not. This will ours was to be congruent with what you would see walking around the neighborhood.
This is Commissioner Bouchard again. That picture in the middle on the right, that's an ADU, not a main structure?
So there is a garage that is to the left side of that structure. And so there aren't very many in Morehead Hill. I think by and large, the neighborhood is still
there's a lot of
being
garages
renovated, but there are lots of garages. So I felt like this was sort of a fringe case in regards to that. But as Nikki mentioned, the others that are pictured here are all within walking distance of our house. So many of these are in the Birch Avenue neighborhood or Trinity Park and on Watts Avenue.
The Morehead Hill bed and breakfast picture, I might have misheard. Was that the bottom left-hand corner of the first page of these pictures?
Yes, it's the yellow gambrel ADU that you can see.
with the green roof.
Yes.
That's the ADU. We didn't take a picture of the whole house.
And that one is on Vickers.
Vickers, okay. I mean, just going off of what my eyes are seeing, I mean, we have windows on this one, which would suggest that it may be an ADU. The other two pictures we looked at that appear to be in Morehead Hill, and that you highlighted with orange boxes, I can't tell whether or not they're actually dwelling units or just garages.
The first one in the one that Carla is highlighting now, that one is certainly an ADU from the look of it, but it is, again, to the right and rear of the property. So without knocking on the door and asking for permission to,
Yeah.
to investigate, I can't say for sure, but it is.
It's built like sideways and it has like a porch
Okay.
that you can barely see in the picture. It has like a little garage door in front and then like a little house in the back.
Thank you. Those are the questions I had. Any other questions from any other commissioners? Hearing none. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak for or against this case? Seeing and hearing none, we will close the public hearing and discuss amongst the commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and put Vice Chair Goolsby on the spot. I know that he had some concerns at the last hearing. So did Commissioner Johnson. Did you all have some observations about what we've heard?
No, I think I appreciate the effort in reducing the scale and looking to forms that are more congruent with what we see in historic neighborhoods, and some more thought put into how the roof was handled. April, I don't know if you would have anything to add.
I completely agree with you, Andy. You said everything that I was going to say. I appreciate the efforts.
Any other thoughts and comments? Hearing none, do we have any recommendations from staff?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. Staff would recommend approval of the application as revised.
Thank you, Carla. Do we have a motion?
Oh.
I'm happy to give a motion, but I think I was having issues downloading this morning. If someone can bring the motion back up to the screen, I'm happy to to read that for us.
Yeah, I don't think any of us actually had access to this.
Tell you what, I've got a printout, so I'm happy to
Okay. All
read
right.
from the printout.
Thanks, Matt.
Going on 19th century here. All right. The Durham Historic Preservation Commission finds that in the case COA 2100008, 709 Shepard Street, new construction of accessory structure. The applicant is proposing to construct a new two-story accessory structure at the end of the existing gravel driveway on the right side of the house. The structure will measure 20 feet by 35 feet in area and nearly 23 feet in height. It will be set back at least 12 feet from the home's rear deck and 3 feet from the side lot line. The structure will be constructed with cementitious fiberboard siding, 1/1 triple grid simulated divided light wood windows, fiberglass entry doors, asphalt roof shingles, and a brick veneer foundation. A cedar-toned treated wood staircase with black aluminum balusters will lead from grade to the second story. An HVAC unit will be installed at the rear of the accessory structure, and 5 wall sconces, 2 salvaged from the primary structure and 3 matching fixtures salvaged elsewhere, will be installed to the side of each entry door and the garage door. Therefore, the conclusion of law is that the proposed addition and alterations are consistent with the historic character and qualities of the historic district and are consistent with the historic properties local review criteria, specifically those listed in the staff report. And the Durham Historic Preservation Commission approves the certificate of appropriateness for case COA 2100008, 709 Shepard Street, new construction of accessory structure with the following conditions. 1, the improvements shall be substantially consistent with the plans and testimony presented to the commission at this commission hearing and attached to this COA. 2, the improvements may require additional approvals from other city or county departments or state or local agencies. The applicant is responsible for obtaining all required approvals relating to building construction, site work, and work in the right-of-way. And 3, a compliance inspection shall be performed immediately upon completion of the work approved herein.
Second.
We can have a roll call, please.
Yeah,
Clerk Elliott.
Chair Pashard,
Approved.
Commissioner DeBerry,
Approved.
Commissioner Fieselman,
Approved.
Vice Chair Goolsby,
Approved.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson,
Approved.
Commissioner Craig, is Commissioner Craig joined yet? Okay. Commissioner Waiters,
Commissioner Waiters approved.
motion passes 7-0.
Thank you all very much for all of your hard work on this, and best of luck to you as you build this ADU.
Thank you all.
Okay, that is going to take us to our next case. Do we need to bring in those participants?
All registered participants should be in attendance.
Hey, I'm here.
Thank you so much. We will now hear case COA 2100012, 804 Hermitage Court Drive, additions and modifications. Before we hear from staff, is there any one of our commissioners who may have a conflict of interest with respect to this case? If not, then let's proceed with swearing in of anyone who plans to speak for this case.
Affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceeding for today's case is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief.
Yes,
And Mr. Thompson, am I pronouncing that correctly?
that's right.
Terrific. Do you consent to presenting your case today via this virtual platform?
I do.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We may now proceed with the staff summary.
Okay. Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. This is case COA 21-00012. It's 804 Hermitage Court Drive, addition and modifications. The applicant, Trinity Design Build, represented by Stephen Thompson. The owners are Derek Robert Hauer and Christina Jean Hauer. It's located between Shepard Street and Hermitage Court Drive, where they meet at University Drive, zoned residential suburban 20. And this is a historic landmark. It's the C.R. Harris House. So I'd like to introduce the staff report into the record. The applicant made known that he has actually some minor revisions. So we're not able to show the new drawings. The commission can decide whether they are able to envision those changes enough to approve the case, or if it would need to be continued. So I'd like to introduce the current staff report into the record and invite Mr. Thompson to present his case.
All right, thanks, Carla. Am I able to control this in any way, or do I have to direct you what page to go to?
You can direct me.
Okay. So if you're looking at the staff report, let's scroll down to the plans. It's going to be probably easiest to start at page 26 in the staff report.
Could you give me the drawing number?
A202.
Okay.
Yeah, this one right here. So we're actually going to scale back the changes. You can see on the far right, we propose a new window, a new single window right there, 6/6. On the far right, we're actually going to leave an existing window in place there. So that's one change. And then as you go to the left, you've got the bank of 4 doors. To the left of that is a new proposed mudroom with a door and a window. We're actually not proposing doing that mudroom anymore. Instead, we would like to put a window on the left side of that bump out. So the bump out containing those 4 doors, we would want to put a window on the side of that instead of doing the mudroom. And that window would be a 6/6, similar to what's shown in this drawing. And then it would have side lights on either side of it, which would also have the simulated divided light of the same scale as what we're seeing in this photo. So that's the extent of the changes to these plans. These plans also contain the new garage door on the far left side of the drawing. We do still propose installing a new garage door there, and then the changes to the garage apartment in the back as well.
This is Commissioner Johnson. Could you repeat those changes one more time? Since it's not written anywhere, I would like to just jot them down for my memory.
Yeah, for sure. So on the far right, where that single 6/6 window is located and labeled as new window, we're going to leave an existing window in place. And then we are not proposing doing the mudroom anymore. instead of the mudroom, we would do a 6/6 window on the left side of that bump out. And that 6/6 window would have side lights on either side of it. That would also be simulated divided light. And then everything else would be in keeping with the plans.
So just for clarification, Mr. Thompson, this is Chair Bouchard again. That new window would basically be adjacent to or near an exterior door to the back that is off of the hall on the existing floor plan?
Yes, I believe we can see that if we scroll up the existing plan, which would be A022. And yeah, so you can see that adjacent door. And actually, we're proposing to replace that door with one to match the adjacent doors there. So it'd be a 15 light wood interior, fiberglass exterior, simulated divided light, Marvin Elevate door.
Well, realizing there's a fine line between clarification questions and just substantive questions, I suppose I should ask if you have anything else that you'd like to present before I open up the floor to commissioner questioning.
The garage door, I think I mentioned this in the application, but it's a steel garage door. I believe there's an image of it in the application. I believe there's a cut sheet of the windows as well. Yeah, so that's the garage door. We're eliminating that round window. And then there's a cut sheet for the doors and windows in there as well. So I don't have the side lights for the new window that we're proposing, but it would be basically the same look and size of that window that we're looking at now. And it would just have side lights, basically equivalent to the width of those lights. And then the dividers would be at the same intervals as those lights that we're looking at there.
With the new,
Anything further, Mr. Thompson?
yeah, Commissioner Johnson, will the new side lights also come from Marvin Windows?
Yep, exactly. It would all be one unit mauled together at the factory.
Okay, thank you.
Katie Hamilton, so you said you're getting rid of the circular window. Are you replacing it with another window, or is it just going to be siding?
So that circle window, as shown in the application, is in the mudroom, which is going away altogether. But the window I'm proposing with the side lights would be, if you're looking at this right side elevation, it would be kind of in that same location, but not on the mudroom addition. It would be on the existing house. So on the left side wall, If you're looking at this elevation of the rear of the house, see where the proposed mudroom meets the kind of the bump out with the 4 doors. So it would be on that exterior wall. So facing the same way that round window is facing.
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. So just to reiterate, if you can envision, we can adjudicate today, but if you have any trouble envisioning what is being described, you do have the option of continuing.
I think we'll probably have that discussion, and I think that's a potential option for consideration. Let me ask this question. I think I know the answer to it, Mr. Thompson. This is Chair Bouchard again. When the mudroom was going to be part of this program, a window would have been removed from the existing structure, correct?
Yes.
And that window is still being removed as part of the revised plan.
Let me verify that. Hang on for a minute. You're referring to the window to the left of the exterior door?
Yes, you looking on A 022 again?
You said A022?
Yes.
Yeah, so that window will stay.
That window will stay. Okay.
Yeah.
And the door will be replaced. Okay.
Yeah. And if the window with the side lights is a sticking point for the commission, we'd be willing to forego that altogether. If I think rather than continue this until next month, we'd be willing to skip that window altogether.
Do any other commissioners have questions for Mr. Thompson?
This is Andy Goldsby. Mr. Thompson, the proposal for the new windows, the 3, I'm looking at your new elevation on A202. The 3 windows that are ganged together as part of the new proposal, it appears that they're going to be at a different head height than the rest of the existing windows. Is that the case?
It does show it more in alignment with the door than the one existing window that we're proposing to keep. I don't actually know how they align with the rest of the windows in the space on other walls. Yeah, so all I can say is it looks like they're aligned with the head height with the door.
Okay. So in keeping the new, keeping that one window to the right of those, you'll have a misalignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if that's a sticking point for the commission, I think the clients would be willing to replace that window if needed, or bring it into alignment with the new windows.
Gotcha. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Andy. Any other commissioners? Questions from Mr. Thompson? If not, then is anyone else present who would like to speak for or against the case? Seeing nobody else, we can close the public hearing and discuss amongst the commissioners. I'm going to open the floor. I'm going to hold off on making comments until I hear from others.
This is Andy. You know, I can envision the changes to this proposal. The where I'm finding the issue is just how various things are resolved because of the changes to the proposal. Things like the door, or excuse me, the head heights, things like the window with side lights, how that interacts with the adjacent door, and how it, to me, might change the overall rhythm of the house altogether. Because I'm thinking about the section of F2 where when windows and openings on non-character defining, non-street facing elevations are modified, added, or removed, retain the overall rhythm and individual proportion of window openings on the structure. So right now I'm having a hard time just seeing how that resolves and satisfies that piece of the guidelines.
Mr. Goolsby, can I ask a follow-up question to
that? Sure, Steve.
Is it the side lights that call into question the rhythm of that window? And if so,
I think I need to see it. Yeah, I think I might need to see it. You know, I don't see the closest thing to side lights I see on the house, at least in these drawings, would be the window above. That doesn't quite go with the rest of the house to begin with, but also just the interaction with the door. You know, I don't know how close it will be to that existing door. When it, you know, if I'm looking at it in the three windows that are gained together and adjacent to the new door in that kitchen, I mean, those almost give a ribbon effect. A larger opening, which is nice, but I don't see very much on this house in consistency. So for me, I think I would need to see it, or it'd be more helpful, you know, whether the side lights were there or not. I'll tell you, I think it would be of interesting to know if the window that is going to be removed from that kitchen could be reused to the left in lieu of buying a new Marvin window. But I also don't know what the existing windows are.
So that one that you're referring to is from an addition. I don't know the age of the addition, but it's not terribly old. It's probably from, just kind of shooting from the hip here, I'd say 80s or 90s. So I don't believe that window has historic value. Yeah, I think we could either forego the side lights or you know, skip the window altogether if it's giving the commission pause. The addition is from 2005, I'm being told.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, commissioners? I will mention my own hesitancy at approving these revised concepts without revised plans, without revised details. I'm concerned about the precedential value of this commission making really significant changes to the recommended motion when there are so many changes to what has been presented to us before today, especially for landmark properties. I think that's the piece of this I'm having the hardest time to reconcile is effectively rewriting what we would be approving without having the benefit of plans and details to fully evaluate things in light of these, what I would classify as, and I invite folks to challenge me on this characterization, as fairly significant revisions from what we were provided in advance of today's hearing. And so I personally have some concerns. I'm also curious to know whether or not the deletion of the mudroom in any way affects whether or not this is even a major versus a minor COA. It's probably still a major, but it's a question I have for staff as to whether or not the nature of the COA changes if that addition is not being added to the structure. So those are two thoughts I had about why I'm hesitant about moving forward today.
This is Commissioner DeBerry. I agree with our chair. Just the combination of a landmark, highly visible, a significant home, lots of changes, I would feel more comfortable. And I kind of feel like the owners would get a better product at the end if we did continue it and allow them to make those changes and come back to us.
I agree, Commissioner Johnson. I agree with my colleagues. I can see if it was one minor switch up, but I think there's a lot of small things kind of equal something bigger for me. And I just rather have something more concrete to review. I agree. Thank you.
I'm curious if there's a countervailing view among any of the commissioners.
Commissioner Bouchard, absolutely not. Everyone has been very clear that clarity is needed and would be appropriate. So I agree with you, sir, and all others on that the clarity of what changes have been presented could be done so more appropriately.
May I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Are there any thoughts on whether the removal of the mudroom still requires a major COA for this project?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. The mudroom doesn't currently exist. You were proposing to construct it, which required the major COA. I'm looking over the staff report. I don't think any of the windows that you were altering were original to the house. And so I do think this could be done, that portion could be done as a minor COA. For the accessory structure, you were changing the roof form. You were adding a gabled dormer. If you were adding any sort of square footage, you're also changing the roof form, which does require a major COA. I think the accessory structure does require the COA, but the major COA, but I think the changes that you're making to the house would only require a minor COA, so long as everything meets the criteria, which by removing that window, I feel confident that you meet the criteria. I think the round window was the main thing that I had concerns about in the original application.
Could we wait on the garage work? Because there's a high likelihood that we weren't going to do the garage as part of this project anyway, as we got farther into the budget and costing and things like that. there's a possibility of phasing that. So could we pull that out of the COA application and just focus on the kind of the doors and windows?
Well, I think that the concern of the commission was being able to adjudicate today without having the revised drawings. So if this can in fact be a minor COA for the modifications that you're making to the primary structure, then how do you feel about resuming and just adjudicating on the accessory structure? And it would have to be a conditional approval to remove all items pertaining to the primary structure. And then you would submit a new minor application addressing the changes that you're making to the primary structure. Anybody can step in and tell me I'm wrong about that, but I think that's what I'm seeing.
That sounds fine to me. If the primary structure could be handled with a minor.
You aren't adding any new square footage now that you're not having the mudroom. None of the windows that you're proposing to remove are original to the landmark structure. And provided that all of the changes that you are making do meet the criteria, then it should be a minor COA.
Krista Kukro, City Attorney's Office. I was wondering, Carla, I'm thinking of sort of what you're describing and the process then that would need to follow for the board to take action. Do you think, given the question of sort of whether it would meet the criteria, do you think it makes sense for the commission to continue the case or continue a portion of the case today, and then you and the applicant can discuss that, and perhaps that can get pulled out as a minor COA?
I think that's exactly right. I think continue it as is, and if we can get the primary structure changes approved as a minor COA before it reaches the commission next month, then at next month's meeting, it would only be the garage item left and the accessory structure item left, and then the applicant can adjust as needed. Continue it another month if there's not time pressure until the application is as it is. And then if there are problems with what's being proposed to the minor structure that I don't believe I can approve at a minor level, then it hasn't been pulled from the report. It's still available for review next month.
And we are okay not pursuing the changes to the garage in today's meeting. So we're okay just basically withdrawing our case and pursuing minor approval for the primary house.
Well, my recommendation would be to not withdraw, just to give you sort of maximum flexibility over the next several weeks to see how things play out. If you elect to withdraw, the major COA with respect to the garage, and that's fine. But I think the cleanest process for us today is to simply continue, give you the opportunity, Mr. Thompson, to work with Carla to see whether or not a minor COA will handle the proposed revisions to the primary structure, and give you time during that time to determine whether or not you even want to move forward with the garage.
Okay.
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. I agree. If you withdraw, you have it, and you decide to come back in the future, the application would have to be substantially different. The proposal would have to be substantially different.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, I will go ahead then and move to continue case COA 210012 to the, bear with me, May 4, 2021 meeting of this commission.
Second.
Clerk Elliott, if we can have a roll call, please.
Chair Pritchard.
Approve the motion to continue.
Oh, okay. Commissioner DeBerry,
Approved.
Commissioner Fieselman,
Approve.
Vice Chair Goolsby,
Approved.
Commissioner, Commissioner Hamilton,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson.
Approved.
Okay. Commissioner Waiters.
Commissioner Waiters approved.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Thompson, thanks for working with us on this, and best wishes to you and to the owners as you finalize the plans and work towards approval.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
We will now hear case COA 2100013, 2207 Inglewood Avenue, demolition of primary structure. Do we have the participants brought into the hearing room? It looks like we do. Before we hear from staff and swear in our speakers, is there anyone of our commissioners who may have a conflict of interest in hearing this case? Hearing none, then let's please proceed with the swearing in of anyone who plans to speak in connection with this case.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceeding for today's case is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
I swear.
Tom Miller.
I do.
Tom Miller, I do.
Kelly Goyette, I do.
Brittany Bell-Lavick, I do.
Frank Levy, I do.
And before we proceed, and for my own benefit, which speakers are speaking for this case, and which speakers will be speaking against this case, if any?
Frank Levy is speaking for the case.
John Black. Oh, sorry.
John Black, for.
Kelly Goyette, for.
Courtney Bell-Lavick, for.
And Tom Miller, I will be speaking for delay.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. All the participants have been sworn. I do need to ask each of you for a verbal response in answering this question. Does everyone here today speaking for this case or for a delay in this case agree, consent to this case being heard via this remote platform?
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I do.
Okay, I think we have all five. Thank you.
Well, and I do.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We may now proceed with the staff summary.
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. This is case COA 2100013, 2207 Inglewood Avenue, demolition of a primary structure. The applicant is Riverbank Construction, represented by John Black. The owner is Gregory Mullendor. It's located on the south side of Inglewood Avenue between Oakland and Rose Hill Avenues. It's zoned residential urban 5, and it's a contributing structure to the Watts-Hillendale Historic District. So again, demolition of a contributing primary structure. I'd like to introduce the staff report into the record and invite Mr. Black to present his case.
Thank you. John Black of Riverbank Construction. This is a first for me of all the years that I've been bringing projects before the HPC. This is the first time I've ever sought approval for the demolition of a contributing structure. And I just wanted to assure you all that neither Riverbank nor the homeowner is necessarily excited about the fact that this house has been so neglected and is in the condition that it's in, that demolition is even a consideration. I mean, the owner's daughter, Kelly Goyette, who's our client, she has lived next door to this house for many years. And perhaps more than anyone would love to see this property actually contribute to the character and quality of the neighborhood. And this is why her family ended up purchasing the property. I just wanted to point out and kind of reiterate that Ms. Goyette is not some out-of-town developer who's looking to make a buck. You know, she's part of the community and has been for years. And actually, since buying this house last August, her family has spent a lot of time considering the best way to address the condition of the house that we're talking about today, as well as who to partner with to bring new life into it. And I think the fact that Riverbank has restored a large number of homes in the Watts Hillendale neighborhood is really one of the reasons we were entrusted with this task. And hopefully our reputation suggests that we're not enemies of preservation by any means. However, of course, we are here asking for approval to demolish this house. But I just want to say it's because we believe it's the best way to serve the owner and provide a safe, high quality home. So in the application materials that you've already read through, I mean, we've alluded to both the structural damage and extremely high presence of mold in the house. And both of those are largely a result of water issues. Both water coming in from a roof that has needed repair for many years, and also groundwater issues from drainage on the site. The owner, Ms. Goyette, the resident of the house next door, she's made us aware of a damaged stormwater culvert that actually runs between 2205 Inglewood, where she lives, and 2207, the house that we're talking about. And as a result of this damaged stormwater pipe, there's large amounts of water that are constantly presenting a threat to both structures. And obviously, Ms. Goyette could talk about the tens of thousands of dollars that they've spent trying to mitigate water damage at her house, 2205, but it continues to be a concern as long as that culvert is not properly addressed. And obviously the previous owner of 2207 never cared to address the issue. So the foundation walls of that house have continued to shift and settle, and water has continued to collect in the basement. And there's even sinkholes in the yard between the two houses. So now that we're presented with this opportunity to help her, to partner with her to address the condition of this house, we actually have the opportunity to address the stormwater problem in a more permanent way, provide a more permanent solution. And in order to do so, we're looking at having to excavate this damaged culvert in order to replace it. And this sort of major site disturbance is obviously more easily done, more cost effectively done if that house is not there, because then an excavator would have adequate access to the site and easily dig up that culvert. Obviously, when looking at the request for demolition from the opponent's perspective, if there are opponents, I can certainly understand skepticism or fear that removing this old house from the neighborhood is going to negatively impact the neighborhood and result in the construction of some offensive, tasteless monstrosity. But I just want to reiterate, Riverbank is not just some builder. We've lived in this community. We do live in the community. We have over a decade of experience working on houses in the neighborhood that provide context, and I think should give confidence that we'll replace this house with something historically appropriate in both appearance and scale. And we know this to be Kelly and Noah Goyette's primary objective as well. And that's why we've, feel comfortable bringing this before you today. They've demonstrated their commitment to this by bringing their intentions before as many of their neighbors that would hear them. And so with that, I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions or hear from anyone else. Thank you.
Do any of the other speakers for the case wish to add anything to Mr. Black's comments?
Yes, Frank Levy. We're at, my wife and I are at 2114 Englewood Avenue, which is about a dozen houses up and across the street from the building in question here. Ms. Goyette contacted me because we purchased our house in conjunction with Riverbank, who then did a substantial renovation that was approved by this committee. And because Ms. Goyette had decided on using Riverbank, she wanted to know about what process we had been through. I just want to make one point. If you just take the street view of 2207, you might believe that it might be a candidate for renovation, but I've been inside 2207 and it is much, much worse shape than the house that we purchased at the time that we purchased it. Our house was in serious disrepair when we purchased it, but it was livable. 2207 is in no way livable. The walls are covered with mold. The floors are unsafe to walk on in many spots. You can see standing water in the basement through one of the holes in the floor. I'm not a professional home builder, but to my eye, demolishing this house and building on the site will produce a much better outcome for the neighborhood than trying to disinfect and renovate the current structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Any of the other speakers who are in favor of this case, anything to add before I open it up for commissioners to ask questions of the proponents?
Yes, I would just like to add, as far as the fungal growth goes throughout the home, I just want to make sure it is known that it is important for most of the building materials to be removed. Given the nature of fungal growth that was present throughout the home on the ceilings, the floors, and the drywall, it is needed to be removed. Fungal growth is deeply embedded into the materials, so they cannot simply be cleaned. We need to remove all those building materials and sand down the existing structure of the home as far as the wood goes.
Thank you for that. Ms. Goyette, anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, I would. I wanted to tell all of you just a little bit more about who our family is, what our intentions were in buying 2207, and what the values are that we all share that are driving the decisions and thinking that we've done and continue to do about 2207. I'm worried that my presentation is a little bit more like personal than anything I've heard so far today, but I do think that it is an important context, and so I'd like to ask for just 10 minutes of your time to present that information about who we are and where we're coming from, if it's okay.
Sure, please
Yes.
do.
So I don't have new information to present, like, pictures of houses or plans or anything, but I'm a teacher by trade and an artist, and I spend a lot of time studying learning effectiveness. And so I made a Google slide presentation, but I guess I'm not allowed to share my screen. I just did it for all your benefit so that it would be a little easier to follow along with and remember what I'm saying. If I have permission to share this PowerPoint, I would love to, but if it's not okay, I understand.
Yeah, let's just move forward if we could.
So no sharing. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have that capability.
Okay, that's fine. So basically there are 5 things that I want to touch on. I want to introduce you to our family, which is me, my husband, and my father. I want to talk about our relationship to 2207 Englewood, why we bought 2207 Englewood, the values that have guided our journey so far with this house, and what our vision for this house is. So to summarize, our intentions for 2207 Englewood are to honor the beauty of our neighborhood and the history of 2207, while also prioritizing a reasonable, safe, and far-sighted approach. As permanent residents of Englewood, we have always tried to balance our own needs with the needs of our neighbors. With 2207, we have done a lot of thinking, reflection, research, and listening to experts and to our neighbors to find this balance. So introducing our family and who we are. My dad is Greg Mullendor. He's a 75-year-old retired California Highway Patrol motorcycle officer. He's also a Vietnam vet who was a lieutenant in a land clearing unit. And he raised me, his daughter, by himself and has remained unmarried. We actually almost lost my dad last year to an aneurysm. We had no idea where he was because I usually talk to him every day, but he just was like MIA for 2 weeks. And it ended up that he was in the hospital and nearly died from this aneurysm. He lives in San Diego currently in the same house that he bought in 1975. And he's a really sweet and thoughtful person and values a humble, down-to-earth life. And excuse me. For me, to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a 40-year-old writing analyst. I used to teach and was part of the faculty union in the Duke Writing Program. I earned my master's degree from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and then worked at StoryCorps during the recession. In 2007, I flew to Birmingham, Alabama and drove straight to Kelly Ingram Park. That was my first visit to the South and the beginning of my journey with anti-racism. For 2 years, I visited the South on a bi-monthly basis. When I first visited Durham, I knew it was home. I was taken not only by its beauty, but I was drawn to its diversity and its incredibly unique race and civil rights history. Since 2014, I've been a mentor with Duke Athletics, where I support student athletes in football and basketball with their academic and personal learning, particularly as it applies to anti-racism, African American studies, and understanding the relationship between capitalism and racism. And my students and I spend a lot of time discussing Durham's Black history. A lot of them, especially the football guys, are here for 4 years, and I find it's one of the most important things I can do to help them know about the city that they're going to call home for 4 years instead of just, staying on campus and focusing, only on that. My husband, Noah, is a 44-year-old Measurement Inc. employee, and he's a Flash Chorus drummer. He's been a Durham resident since 2001 and earned his BSW from Central in 2016. He grew up at contracting sites and has 25 years of professional construction and carpentry experience. He's also been doing professional landscape maintenance and repair since 2003. He in Durham has put in over 500 volunteer hours with populations affected by poverty, aging, and developmental disability. So that's who we are. Our relationship to 2207 Englewood. We've lived next door since 2013, and we have proven our stance on historic preservation through our long-lasting commitment to the historical preservation of our home at 2205. Our family are friends of Rick Hanford, who lived in the house next door at 2207 for a very long time. Rick had approached my dad years ago about buying the house, but his sisters weren't ready to sell at that time. And then finally in 2020, when he was ready to leave, my dad had planned to buy the house for $200,000, but in the bidding war that ensued, he went up to a painful $260,000 bid to beat other parties. Those other parties were large corporate contracting companies and flippers. So why we bought 2207 Englewood is that 2205 is our forever home, my husband's and mine. We moved here because over the years we've lived in and loved historic homes for their character and history. And because our main competition was flippers and large contracting companies, we knew the risk was very high of another large, modern, multiple residence building going up if we did not win the bid. My dad plans to age gracefully in North Carolina at 2207 Englewood, where we can care for him if and when needed. And the fourth reason why we bought the house next door is because the severe and chronic water intrusion from the broken culvert between the two houses will continue to threaten, damage, and incur foundation repair costs for both houses. We knew the problem would be more challenging to fix if a flipper or large contractor motivated solely by profit and not longevity bought 2207. We've actually spent over $20,000 since 2014 on repairing our own foundation and basement, and it's pretty much just without actually addressing the culvert in the way it needs to be addressed. It's a losing battle, and we're going to continue to have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to keep the water from just ruining our foundation. And then the values that guide our journey with 2207 Englewood. They are quality, longevity, and integrity. So in terms of quality, I think that John spoke really well to this, that we were extremely thoughtful about who we went with in deciding to work with. We spoke with many other companies, many of whom made hasty knee-jerk determinations about the house, but Riverbank proved that they were very thoughtful. They put in the time to research, balance options, and talk us through everything. And like he said, it's not an easy decision to make, to think about demolishing the house. It's really sad. And I think that, but I think that demolishing, although it is a really hard decision to arrive at, it feels like the right one. In terms of longevity, our family believes that when you do things right and you do them well using quality materials and building off of sound design, you get longevity. Like I said, we don't like Band-Aids on broken bones, and you will never find us spending money on the short term when there is a long-term solution within reach, which has not been the case with the culvert. The value of integrity. In the context of both 2205 and 2207, we define integrity as respect for our neighborhood and for our neighbors. It means honoring the historical value of 2207 and the stories of the people who have lived there. Ever since we had the notion of buying 2207, it was our vision to preserve as much as possible. But honestly, the process of peeling back the layers in the last year has been full of uncertainty. In terms of the upper level of the house, we hope some salvage is possible, but the basement is another story. The foundation, I'm sorry. And lastly, in our definition of integrity, we believe is empathy. It challenges us to step outside of ourselves and to separate the desires we might project onto this building, instead looking at the house as an entity all its own with its own history. So this idea of empathy with houses reminds me of my dad. Every time my dad travels back to the East Coast, he visits the home he grew up in and which his parents owned until they died. Every time he takes a photograph of it as if it was an old relative or friend. I think the way my dad is with his childhood house and the way he is with the house he's lived in since the 1970s must be genetic, but it's something Noah and I share as well. We have this quote hanging on the bulletin board in our kitchen where we see it every day. It says, "There is so much that a renovation can teach us about respect and empathy, the weaving of our needs into those of another, even if the other is made of wood, perhaps especially so. A house is a quiet partner. You have to listen carefully." Even though this quote names renovation, I think the idea can and should be applied in cases of demolition as well. I don't know how many of you have ever been faced with the difficulty of making end-of-life decisions for another person, but when it's time to let go, you just do. And knowing that means that you've listened carefully. Now, we've been living next door to Rick and to this house at 2207 for nearly 8 years. Our houses are twins when it comes to the flooding they endure 100 days out of the year. And we know what that's been like for 2205. It's been hard and it's been expensive. Since Rick moved away, we've been in even more intimate conversation with 2207, listening carefully as it were for that past year. We've had every sort of expert in there who's willing to step past the threshold. And once you're inside, the painful experience of poverty and disability is palpable. And the prolonged and extreme neglect the house has suffered has descended like a cancer into its belly. The foundation of the house is as close to a metaphorical representation of illness and more accurately death as you can get. It is literally rotten, It has been drowning amid the sludge of stormwater and mold for decades. So yes, we can put this house on life support or blast the cancer and what's left of the spongy bones and failed organs with remediation, but it seems either unnatural or cruel. Some might cheerily refer to this as restoration or renovation, or say it's how we breathe new life into this old house. From our intimate knowledge living next door, those all sound like naive euphemisms. The reality is that anything that falls short of completely rebuilding the foundation is more like an unnatural corpse revival. What you'd ultimately end up with is a zombie or perhaps an uncannily beautiful vampire. Rick, in the days leading up to his move, repeated again and again that he hoped we would just tear the house down. He knows her better than anyone. And as I said, when it's time to let go, you just do. Anyone who thinks or says otherwise is guilty of a common and easy mistake, the mistake of just plain not listening. If the way a person relates to houses reflects at all on their capacity for empathy, I'll just say, I'd hate to have any one of those people as my medical power of attorney. Finally, our vision for 2205, I have photographs, but I can't show them. Sorry, for 2207. We love old houses. We've never wanted to live anywhere or have anything to do with any house unless it's an old house. The idea that we are thinking about building a new construction is very strange and filled with a lot of melancholy and sadness. But we want to build something that looks the actual, there's a house for a long time that I've loved because I love looking at this old house magazine, watching TV shows about old houses. And there's one particular house in Minneapolis called the Nokomis House, which has it's almost exactly the same footprint as Rick's house. It's the same square footage, same chimney placement. It's not like exactly what we want to build, but we want to build something with Riverbank's guidance that is as similar to Rick's house as we can get. And that really is something that our neighbors and that we can be proud of, and that makes our neighborhood more beautiful and shows the love that we have for our history and for our neighborhood. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening. I know it was maybe an esoteric presentation, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Well, there's a motion here that's apparent. We appreciate your thoughts and comments, Ms. Goyette. And clearly this property means a lot to you. With that being said, we have to focus on what our jurisdiction is here and the criteria that apply to that jurisdiction. We need to ask some questions of the proponents and then move on to Mr. Miller's presentation about why he believes a delay is appropriate with respect to the demolition, which really speaks to our sole role in this process. We cannot stop demolition from happening, but we can evaluate whether or not it's appropriate to impose a delay of up to 365 days. And so, commissioners, do you have any questions for any of the proponents, particularly any questions that might be directed at the issue of whether or not a 365-day delay or up to a 365-day delay is something we should consider?
What kind of professional obviously John Black is a qualified contractor, but when we talk about mold and mildew, what are the professional qualifications of the team that has reviewed it to speak as experts on this matter?
Courtney, who spoke earlier, is whom we hired to investigate the mold issue and the air quality in the house. If I can give the floor to her to receive your questions if they're related to that matter.
Yes, so, excuse me. I have an environmental science degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. That is my formal education, and I am also under an umbrella certification from the owner of Mirror Mold LLC, and have been underneath her training for roughly a little over 2 years. So those are my specific certifications for the analysis of the microbiological results.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And if I can add, the growth that was found on the microbiological slides that are analyzed by a third-party lab, they are not analyzed by myself. I take the samples and then they are given to a third party to analyze to restrict a conflict of interest. Those fungal growths found were Aspergillus, Penicillium, and Stachybotrys. Aspergillus and Penicillium, they are found repeatedly to cause cancer in the kidney and the liver, as well as being immunosuppressants and binding to DNA protein synthesis. Stachybotrys has been found to bind to DNA and RNA protein synthesis, as well as being an immunosuppressant.
Thank you for the further clarification. That helps. Thanks.
Of course.
Courtney, I have just a quick response to that. Do you believe in your professional opinion that if this demolition is delayed, all the different types of organisms you listed, do they tend to have an effect to neighboring properties or anybody walking near them, or is it mostly contained in the building?
No, so these are airborne spores. So the longer you leave them, the more prolific they'll become. As a lot of people have experienced, fungal growth can happen very quickly. You can go to bed, take a shower before bed one night, wake up, and you have fungal growth in your shower all of a sudden. Happens very quickly. So with the moisture of this home, including the lack of air conditioning right now and the heat and humidity of summer that is about to be in North Carolina, these spores are going to become very prolific and they can spread to neighboring buildings. It's not very likely, but the longer they're allowed to become prolific and the further they're able to get, then, I mean, if there's any type of building material left outside of this home, if it picks anything up that's garbage wise that was left improperly disposed of, it can spread that way. So yes, I do think it can spread and cause damage to other nearby structures.
So potential public health risk.
Yes.
Potentially. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is Chair Bouchard again. One question for Ms. Goyette, one question for Mr. Black. For Ms. Goyette, are you and your husband or your father incurring costs related to 2207 beyond property taxes and insurance? Those costs can be financial or otherwise. And then the question for Mr. Black is going to be, absent complete demolition of 2207, is there anything that can be done with respect to this damaged stormwater drainage pipe that would alleviate the flooding issues at 2205?
So I'll answer your question that you can't really separate the issue of the stormwater from the damage that 2207 is causing to 2205, because if you look at the line of where the creek that is that doesn't have anywhere to go, it's right in between the property lines. It starts in the back of our property and then it goes right along the property line, but it's mostly on Rick's on the property of 2207. And it is such, I mean, we've gotten quotes on that in the past. That's a $20,000 job at least to excavate the culvert with the house standing next door. You can't, if you imagine, the space between the two houses we've measured is 12 feet wide and stretches 175 feet from the front of the property, the back of the property that would need to be excavated. If you even put the smallest bobcat in that space with a backhoe arm, just imagine, even with the smallest bobcat imaginable, having like the radius that you need to turn that around. Every time you scoop up a claw full of dirt, where are you going to put that dirt? You have to drive the Bobcat all the way down to the front. I mean, you're talking about the difference of like weeks of labor versus days of labor. And it's prohibitively expensive to do it on our own. And we just knew that if some contractor bought this house, we didn't know that this was an issue. It was so well concealed by the people who we bought this house from. They like covered up sinkholes with rocks and cement and plant life, and it was just a really bad surprise, and one that, we love this house in this neighborhood so much that we'll do anything we can to stay here. And then aside from just the property taxes in this house being something, my dad bid $260,000 on this house, and we know that it's going to cost at least $500,000 to $700,000 to build a modest, respectable home. So we're right there at just below the $1 million mark for this house, and that is maybe not the wisest investment, but what we're investing in is family and our neighborhood. And so paying property taxes on top of a house that we can't do anything with, and then also having to incur, when the rain comes, 100 days out of the year, we already have to remediate our basement again, despite $20,000 across 4 repairs that we've had to do. I have like a 5-page long bulleted list of all the things that we've done, digging W drains along, the entire length of the crawl space, putting in an extra sump pump, having the entire wall of our basement dimple boarded, putting in a full seal. It's just, I can't even begin. So to answer your question, we cannot separate the costs that we incur for 2207 standing there, aside from the health risk it poses to us being just 12 feet away from the 2 rooms we are in, the 3 rooms we're in most of the time. You can't separate the broken culvert issue and the terrible flooding. I wish I could show you a video. I guess it's new information, but when you see it, it's moving. It's 10 feet deep, and it happens every time it rains. I wish you could, sorry, 10 inches, not 10 feet.
Ms. Guy, let me just follow up with one, what I hope is a quick question. If this commission were to impose any delay up to 365 days, what beneficial use, if any, would you or your father derive from 2207 during that delay?
We can save portions of the house. We've already done our due diligence talking to Riverbank, and we'd like to be able to save whatever we can from the house that's salvageable, like the chimney. But I don't think, we've already gone down that road, and we've put in I think you can probably tell that I'm a very research oriented person. And my husband is as well. And we're not, he has a lifetime of experience with building and with landscape. We're not going into this naive or, the time that a delay would provide, I guess that's not the right verb. It would be more of a hindrance, and it will cause more anxiety in terms of our own personal health than it would really help.
Would it be fair to say that you wouldn't derive any beneficial use from this property during the period of delay?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners with questions for the proponent before we turn to Mr. Miller?
Can I ask a clarifying question? The COA says that this is a non-contributing multifamily structure dating from 1978. The sale records on the property say it was built in 1925. Can somebody clarify?
I think the thing that you're seeing about 1978 is referring to additions, but actually the land was purchased in 1925, and then I believe that the house was actually built in 1926. So it is, it is a historic and contributing property. Yeah.
Commissioner Fieselman, this is Chair Bouchard again. I see exactly what you're referring to. It looks like in our proposed motion, there's a reference to it being a non-contributing structure from 1978. Just for clarity, Carla, could you confirm that this is in fact a property from the late 1920s that is contributing to the Watts Hillendale Historic District?
Rosenberg Planning Department, that was what was stated in the inventory, and we derived that information typically from the tax record or from the National Register listing.
Great.
I may have shared the National Register listing.
So confirmed. This is contributing and from the late 1920s. Is that right?
Yes, that's stated in the National Register listing, which I have on the screen right now. Late 1920s.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If there is nothing further for the proponents, I will give the floor to Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Thomas R. Miller. I reside at 1110 Virginia Avenue in the Watts Hillendale Historic District around the corner from this property. I've lived in Durham all of my 64 years, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 38 years and in the district for all of its 20-year history. I was part of the team that put the district application together, and I advocated for it with the Durham City Council when it was created. I am now a retired attorney, but in my professional life for 30 years with the Attorney General's office, I headed up the real estate regulatory section and advised state agencies and the registers of deeds about things relating to real estate regulation. I advise cities and counties on matters relating to zoning and land use regulation. I address you today as president of the Historic Preservation Society of Durham. You may know it better by its trade name, Preservation Durham. Our board, after having discussed this over the last few days, urges you to impose a 365-day delay for the demolition of this property. If I may, excuse me. So just to clarify, there is an error in your materials provided by the staff with regard to the proposed motion. That looks like that is information lingering from perhaps another case that didn't get deleted. The house in question, I have examined the title of this property. The house was built by a man named W.E. Alley. He was president of the West Durham Lumber Company. He was also president of the Fidelity, the West Durham branch of the Fidelity Bank. He built this house in 1926 and conveyed it in December of that year to a man named Cam, who was the radiologist, the X-ray technician at the Watts Hospital at that time. And then it has passed along. The house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. However, when it was new, it only had 1 bathroom. As you can see from the photographs, it's a wood frame construction clad with lap siding. It has a brick foundation. And then on the side, you have that very interesting brick chimney with the inset panel that is stuccoed, arched panel that is stucco. The chimney is in good condition. It's true, it's not pulling away from the house. Thanks to Ms. Goyette, I had an opportunity to tour the house last Friday with a member of our board who is a licensed contractor, Austin Moore, who is with Gateway Construction. And we went through the house from top to bottom, from the attic to the basement, and looked at it very, very carefully. Although the house clearly has a lot of problems. The exterior walls are in really good condition, and I've heard a lot about the foundation today. The house sits on a series of piers The foundation wall is a curtain, not necessary for holding the house up. All of those walls are true. There are here and there some minor cracks, no signs that any of those cracks are opening or closing or moving in any way. They're the kind of cracks that you would find in the foundation of every house in the historic district, Watts Hillendale Historic District. So I'm not sure I understand. When I went under the house and looked at the piers, all the piers seem to be true. The here and there on the exterior of the house, that there I saw 2 rotted fascia boards. The rest of the siding is, although the paint is peeling off of it, it's in pretty good condition. There are 2 additions to the house. Please, if you'd stop on that one photo. So there's one addition to the rear. You see it here. This addition was probably from the 70s or 80s. It's clad with masonite. However, whoever designed the addition, it's tied in really nicely, and you have to get fairly close to it to realize it's not original to the house. Also, on the east side of the house, there's a bump out there that's from about the same period of time, also clad in masonite, and is, again, so sensitively done that you have to get close to it to tell. We went all the way around the house and through it. And so pause there if you would. Actually, I don't know who's showing these, but pause there. The water intrusion from the roof is coming in because the roof of this house is a cottage plan. That means it is essentially got a long horizontal ridge line that runs parallel to the street, making the house purposefully appear to be a small cottage, when in fact a great deal of the house is located behind that ridge line. This means that the house has those 2 valleys, and because it has a gable projection out the front, it has 2 more valleys there. Whoever put the roof on this house when it was last re-roofed wove the shingles in the valleys and did such a poor job. It is there where the water is coming in. So these photographs do show you the worst places of deterioration, and they are bad. I don't want to downplay it. And in fact, throughout the house, especially the ceilings and in the walls of the rooms that are under the valleys, there is a great deal of fungal growth in the, I believe the expert said drywall, but it's actually lath and plaster. And so that material is all terribly compromised. In places, the water is on the floor where you can see wood floors. I mean, they clearly are water marked. There are places that have carpet, and I can't tell you what's happened to the floors under those areas. All the casework in the house is in good condition, although it's grimy. All the windows are original and appear to be good. All the doors are there and open and close. I went into every room, and when other people were not in the rooms, I jumped up and down to see if there was any movement or sponginess in the floors. I could not find any. If you go back to the picture you just showed, no, that one. No, you keep that one. So here's a picture of the ceiling in the living room. The flash around the chimney is leaking, and it has caused this damage. As you can see, the lath and plaster is dramatically damaged, and this has actually been pulled. Some of this has been pulled down. It hasn't just fallen. In order to get access to see what's going on. I mean, it's the kind of thing I would do. I'm not criticizing anybody for making this, pulling this material down. But you can see the ceiling joists there. They are in good shape. They are not deteriorated. Now, I am sure in the roof structure of this house, probably near those valleys, there's certainly going to be some rotten decking. There's also probably going to be some rotten framing members up there that would have to be repaired or replaced. But this house is not irredeemable. I mean, it's terrible, and it's horrible to believe that Mr. Hanford was living in it. And because I was his neighbor and an acquaintance of his, and we were even in 4th grade together, I feel bad about that, because there he was. And I did not realize he was living in such horrible conditions. I don't know what I would have done about it, but I as a member of the community, it's disturbing. And it's in the house in the condition it is, you would not want anybody to live in it. But when I have looked at the renovations that have been done in this district, even by the folks at Riverbank, who, by the way, do excellent work, and David Parker was with us when we went through the house. I have seen houses much worse rehabilitated with COAs from this commission. And in fact, just down the street just recently with a COA from this commission, the house at 2004 Inglewood was rehabilitated. It was in such terrible condition due to deterioration from moisture that over half of the fabric of the building was removed. So everything behind, that was also a cottage roof house, although a decade older than this. Everything behind the ridge was taken down so that only the front three walls, the front wall and the two end walls of the front of the house were standing, and everything else was replaced. The result, though, is a substantially reconstructed property that presents its original historic front to the street. The same sort of thing could be done here. So this lot was laid out in 2014. The plat is recorded at Plat Book 2, pages 104, 105. It's the Inglewood subdivision. It's a 50 by 150 foot lot. It is conforming to the RU2 zoning, and there's a lot of space. This house could be dramatically enlarged behind that ridge line, and it is the kind of addition that you have routinely approved for this type of house in the Watts Hill and Dale district, and I believe it could happen here. In our conversations with Mr. Parker and Mr. Moore following our inspection, we all agreed that that while it would be expensive, this house could be rehabilitated and it could be extended. So that enlarged. It's a 1926 house. Its interior rooms are small. Anybody who would, even if there was no moisture invasion, even if there was not infestation in certain walls and the ceiling with the mold, which is terrible, anybody who was going to rehabilitate this house would actually pull all of that material out under any circumstances, with mold or without mold, in order to rework the interior. Now, I'm a historic preservationist, and I hate it when people do that, but what people do on the insides of the houses that are in historic districts is up to them, and outside the jurisdiction of the Historic Preservation Commission, and also outside my ability to comment as a participant in a proceeding like this. But I believe that this house is eminently savable. Let me talk about the basement a little bit. Unless you get a mistaken understanding of what's going on, this house actually is essentially a crawl space house. It has underneath it a kind of a semi-basement, not in any way finished, a space that is 14 by 20 feet, where the original boiler and coal storage were. And then, of course, there's a more modern furnace there now. However, it has not worked in some time. That space is underwater. It at one time had a sump pump, and it's still there, and the pipe that drained it still sticks out into the driveway. It hasn't operated in a long time. It's repairable. It's not the entire extent of this 1,400, 1,500 square foot house. It's just that 14 by 20 foot space. It's true there is a culvert, or I would call it a tile, that runs from the back of Miss Goyette's yard down to and joins the storm sewer in Inglewood Avenue. It is obviously not functioning as intended, and they have a severe water problem. These houses are at the bottom of a descending slope that rises behind them, and something should be done to catch that water and direct it between the houses in a way that does not cause an invasion or seepage of the water through the walls. I am sure that the walls that hold back the dirt in the 14 by 20 space under this house are probably not waterproofed on their exterior, so the water seeps through. Correcting that tile will help, but in any event, there should be waterproofing in that space. I cannot speak to the condition on Ms. Goyette's house at 2205, but it sounds like their downstairs space is probably larger. Whatever happens for the well-being of the structures that are built here, that that tile should be replaced. As to its cost and the difficulty associated with it, I'm not really able to say. There is a code compliant space interval between the houses. And so I believe you can get heavy equipment in there to remove the tile and put in a new one, or whatever kind of water moving system would be appropriate. The slope will certainly handle it if it's graded correctly. So again, I've heard what's said about this house. I've been in many worse houses, and I know that the folks at Riverbank on this street with a COA from this agency has fixed houses that are worse, and up to removing literally half of the entire fabric of the house. And I believe that it may be necessary or to do that here, but within the exterior walls of this house, in terms of their framing, their cladding, all of that is in okay condition. The inside of the house is bad. The lath and plaster has to come out, but I believe that would be done for rehabilitation in any case. Now I want to redirect the commission's attention to Chapter 160D 949, which is a recodification of which I believe is maybe still current language in 160A, that when it comes to an application to demolish a house in a historic district, the first thing that we do is we look at the house and its relative significance. So this house was built in 1926. It is in substantially original condition. Its historic integrity is somewhat compromised by the water that's coming into it, primarily from a leaking roof, but that is fixable. It contributes to the historic district. And I want to point out that in this block of Inglewood Avenue, all of the houses are classified contributing except one. It's on the corner. All of the houses are the original houses. They are all contributing. Their historic integrity is good. And the one that is not contributing, that's on the corner, is not contributing because at the time the National Register nomination was done, this was 20 years ago, that house was built just outside the period of significance. So that one's not contributing because of its age, not because of its any kind of situation with its historic integrity. And if we ever actually go back and re-examine the period of significance for the Watts Hillendale Historic District, I believe that house could be reclassified as contributing. To remove this house then in a block where all the houses are original and where they're all but one are contributing, in my opinion, will do a violence to the district that is inappropriate and not necessary. While it's true from a financial standpoint, a person might reasonably want to tear this house down and build another. That isn't the test. So when we look at the test, we have to show that there would be that a delay, imposing a delay or not reducing the delay that is appropriate here, not reducing the delay would cause extreme hardship or permanent deprivation of beneficial value by virtue of the delay, or that the house itself has no significance to the district. Well, this house has significance to the district. And since really nothing is happening with it now, it's really hard to say that there would be a significant impact on beneficial use that would be imposing a delay on this property would be any different from imposing a delay on any property. In other words, all of those, if you're just determined not to fix the house, then the 365-day delay on this house would be the same for any other. Will this house get worse if nothing is done? Yes, it probably will. Right now, I believe the house qualifies under the definition of demolition by neglect, and could be an enforcement issue if anybody wanted to pursue it that way. I think the correct thing to do is to delay the destruction of this house and to work with these owners if they are willing. And Ms. Goyette and I spoke at some length, and she said that she was open to this, to talk to more people about how we might rehabilitate this house, how it might be enlarged in order to generate more revenue. When I look at the deed that was given to her father when he purchased it in August, it says that the deed stamps indicate that the purchase price was $230,000. Houses in this block right now are selling for $400,000, $500,000, and $600,000. Therefore, in my opinion, there is $200,000 or $300,000 to work with to rehabilitate this house, and if you enlarge it, to maybe even go larger, and to make the house a rehabilitated and enlarged house even more attractive in the marketplace. I understand that because they live next door, and Ms. Goyette has said this, that she is concerned that her father bought this house in order to control it. What happens here? I appreciate that. I live in this neighborhood, and I want to make sure that what happens to this house is correct for the historic district and correct for the neighborhood. I believe it's possible for them to fix it up, perhaps, but if they wanted to sell it to somebody who would, in order to make sure nothing untoward happened, we could double down on the protections that it has from a historic preservation point of view. Right now, it's protected by the local historic district, and changes have to come to you, but they could also give Preservation Durham historic preservation covenants under the statutes that allow that, so that even if this commission were to allow changes, it would still have to go through Preservation Durham, depending upon how we wrote the covenants to protect it. So there are ways to make sure that whatever happens with this house are appropriate and significant and correct with regard to the way it functions in the district and the way it would function as Ms. Goyette's neighbor. Again, the house is bad. The pictures that you've been showed, that you were shown, are focus in on the worst parts of it. But again, I have looked all through this house. I've looked through it with a contractor on our board, and we agree that the essential structural members of this house, as nearly as we could see them, are in reasonable or fair condition. There are clearly going to be places that are bad, but the walls are true. All the doors open and close. They're all original. All the framework is good. So,
Mr. Miller, I don't want to cut you off. This is Chair Bouchard again, but you are repeating yourself, and I do want to move the hearing along today.
You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman.
So
I apologize.
I note that both Ms. Goyette and Mr. Black have raised their hands. I'm presuming that they want to provide rebuttal testimony, and I'm clearly going to allow that to happen. However, based on our typical procedures, I would like to give the commissioners an opportunity to ask any questions of Mr. Miller before we conduct any rebuttal testimony.
So at any rate, I want to finish up by saying the Preservation Society of Durham, Historic Preservation Society of Durham, respectfully asks the Historic Preservation Commission to impose a 365-day delay. The loss of this house in this block in the district will do violence to the integrity of the block and cause essentially irreplaceable or irreversible damage to the historic district. And I believe under the legal criteria that we have to look at, for you to allow the demolition of this house, you're required by law to find that the structure has no particular value or significance toward maintaining the character of the district. That's the finding that the statute imposes. And I don't believe that even in its current condition, you could make that finding with regard to this house. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Miller?
I have a question for Mr. Miller and Joe Black from Riverbank. Have you had the opportunity to do some prior investigating to see whether or not, or at least kind of test the climate, whether or not at this time there would be interested investors who could potentially preserve the house, do the remediation work and preserve the house? Is that still a possibility in the industry? Is it beyond an investor's ability from your experience?
I don't believe it's my place to say that another investor should come and take the property that they've purchased rightfully. But I guess looking at it from an investor standpoint, and I'm glad Mr. Miller brought up 2004 Inglewood, because I worked on that one as well. You got to be able to make money on the property for it to be a good investment. And I know that we did tear down the vast majority of 2004 Inglewood. And I can say that $200,000 to $300,000 was not near enough to do that work. That was more like 4 or 5. And the issue is that our professional experience suggests that you're looking at a 10 to 15% higher construction cost when you're dealing with renovations, remodels like this, as opposed to new construction. And then there's just so much uncertainty with renovation as well, especially when so many of these surfaces are still covered up. And when you have this mold issue, we don't truly know the full extent until we start peeling layers away. And so that uncertainty provides a whole nother layer of risk that I think an investor would shy away from.
Any questions specifically for Mr. Miller before we give Mr. Black and Ms. Goyette a chance to rebut? Okay, hearing none, both Ms. Goyette and Mr. Black, I see that you have your hands raised. The floor is yours, whoever wants to go first.
I already shared some of the things I wanted to say. I just obviously will point out that we've got 4 licensed general contractors on staff at Riverbank, that we've taken a professional assessment of this building. We've had a licensed, in fact, 2 licensed engineers over to the site to inspect it. And the engineer that provided the letter that you have in your packet told us to tear down 2004 Inglewood, which we did not do. So I think it is bad. Could it be saved? Are there elements that are salvageable? Maybe. But I think what makes this house so much different than 2004 Inglewood is the water damage, the moisture, the mold that's present. Again, that was not a problem at 2004. Here, it clearly is. And again, the uncertainty of what lies behind all these layers, that's a huge risk for Ms. Goyette to take on when it comes to renovating, because there's no telling how much more money it's going to take to properly renovate and make this house safe for occupancy. There's just a peace of mind that you get with a new construction that I think is extremely valuable.
Ms. Goyette?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say, I wanted to note that one of the things that Mr. Miller repeated was this idea that many houses are in much worse condition. And I'd like to point out how subjective both of those terms, many and much worse, are. I would love to see which houses in this neighborhood that are contributing houses have been sitting in literally 4 feet of water for 30 plus years. And I just don't, and also when he said that houses in this neighborhood sell for $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, those houses are habitable. This house is not habitable. It is a health hazard, this house right now. It's very, very sad that Rick was living there. And I also just wanted to say, I noticed that Mr. Miller took the liberty of speaking for me with regard to the conversation we had, and I don't feel that he accurately represented what I said to him. I was also there when he walked through the house, and I'd like to note that you cannot go down into the basement. So when Mr. Miller said that he went down into the basement, that he went into every room in the house, went up into the attic, he did not, because he cannot. You cannot know what the shape of the foundation is in unless you are down there. He didn't even step 1 foot down a stair to look at that basement. And I will say that, like, from a more personal perspective, that I don't think I can remember a time when I have spent an hour with somebody where it was so hard to get a word in edgewise. My husband is a big talker, and he's pretty good. He's from Boston. He's good at getting a word in edgewise. And even with his 25 plus years of building experience and landscaping experience, Mr. Miller would not let my husband speak. When we were showing him the back of the property where the water comes through on a dry day, when we tried to show him the video of the water rushing through, he was just incredibly dismissive. At one point, he even went like this to me when I tried to show him something regarding the water. And he actually suggested that we should catch the water with a pond in our backyard, which just, I think, illustrates his complete lack of understanding and also unwillingness to actually really listen, absorb, and sit with what we were saying. And I think you all remember what I said earlier about how understanding a house, having empathy for a house, requires listening carefully to that house. And in my estimation of Mr. Miller, though I only met him for 1 hour and spoke with him for an hour on the phone, I would say he is one of the worst listeners I have ever encountered.
All right. Well,
so I just want to
Ms. Grant,
say,
I want to try to keep this above the fray.
okay. Yes, and I understand that, and I will repeat again that we would like to save as much of the house as possible. We know that I don't think I can say any more about how much we appreciate history, how much we appreciate Durham. And honestly, I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Black said about, the investment that we've made and that we're prepared to make is close to the $1 million mark. We're not going to be able to find an investor who's willing to spend that amount of money unless they're a big contractor like Jeff Monsane, That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to exercise a chair's privilege and ask the first question here for our proponents in connection with their rebuttal testimony. Some of the things that I heard in terms of evidence from Mr. Miller are as follows. Exterior walls are in excellent shape. Piers appear to be true. Windows and doors appear to be good and operational. Is there any testimony from the proponents to rebut that testimony from Mr. Miller on the exterior walls, the piers, and the windows and doors?
Yes, I'd like to say that he's saying that they appear to be true. That's part of what I was trying to say. You can't tell. The basement currently has 4 feet of standing water in it. I don't know how you could tell from peeking your head down around the stairs down to the crawl space that they're true. And also there are multiple stair step cracks in all around the skirt of the house. I don't think he actually really, he was there for an hour, but he was mostly talking about himself. I don't think he really looked at the house.
Mr. Black, your observations as a contractor on the condition of the exterior walls, the piers, windows and doors?
Sure, I will actually agree with Ms. Goyette on the foundation. You can't really get a good sense of it by just peeking down there. And there is a lot of water. So you literally have to go down in the water to investigate everything. And again, I'll point you to your packet of information. You've got the report from a licensed engineer. We've had multiple people on staff, even Mr. Parker that was there with Mr. Miller. He does not share Mr. Miller's view. And I think that there's still so much uncertainty. I'm just going to say that again. Can things be salvageable? Maybe, but there's so much uncertainty that we cannot know for certain until we start taking things apart.
Commissioners, any other questions for the proponents? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and provide the commissioners an opportunity to discuss this case. Is there anyone who would like to open up the discussion?
Katie Hamilton. I guess I'll fall on that sword. This is a hard one. I think we've heard good testimony on both sides. And clearly there's a lot of passion within this block for both this structure and the neighborhood as a whole. I feel qualified individuals on both sides have, spoken to a number of issues. When we're looking at the criteria, I just want to clarify that it's not just a matter of if it is historically significant. There can be other factors such as hardship that we can consider if we, which I think obviously we've heard enough testimony today that there is historic value in this structure. And I don't argue that fact, but I do think we need to look at the hardships that the current owners and the neighborhood as a whole will impose. And based on the testimony provided by the environmental engineer, it is based on expert testimony, a factor that we should consider of the health of the public, as well as the health of these residents living next door. So I don't know that I'm sold on a 0-day delay or a 365 delay. I don't have, I feel like I'm leaning somewhere in the middle, but I don't know if other commissioners have strong opinions that they prefer to share.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson, I think that the main issue causing damage to this historic structure is the water damage. And it seems as though the water has been causing damage to this house for years and many years, and it hadn't been taken care of. So I think I don't see how a 365-day delay is going to, I'm not sure what that would do or how that would benefit or this particular property, or any investor would be willing to even come in and really do the work. I'm struggling with that long of a delay for this property. And I don't see it. I don't feel like any of the testimony helped me see that.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner DeBerry, Commissioner Goolsby, Commissioner Fieselman, any thoughts?
What's top of mind for me is that the point of a delay would be for the current owner to seek out with additional options for preserving the original structure. And in the testimony, I've heard Kelly articulate that she's done, and Riverbank have done a fair bit of research already. And in Kelly's tone, I don't hear interest in or willingness to continue looking at options. And I think, if that is why we would put a delay, we won't collectively get much value out of extending timeline on demolition. That's where my head is.
Tad or Randy? I will, Chair Bouchard, I'll spend just a moment expressing my thoughts about the difficulty here. I hear the passion and the emotion on the part of Ms. Goyette and the proponents of this project. I'm concerned about the fact that we have a structure that, based on the best evidence before us, may be salvageable, with good exterior walls, good windows, and maybe a good foundation. We don't know. And I appreciate what Mr. Black was saying about the fact that, you don't know until you look. It's not lost on me that our purview, whenever COAs come in front of us, non-demolition cases, we're not concerned about the inside of these homes. I mean, we're worried about how these homes present from the outside. And I'm struggling because although it appears to me that a whole lot of good work has been done to determine that this property is not habitable and not in significant part salvageable on the inside, I don't feel like I've heard enough to convince me that this is an appropriate candidate for immediate demolition. And so that's my struggle. We're a preservation commission, and we're clearly tasked under 160D 949 to do our best to balance preservation with the needs of the property owner, and any hardship that the property owner would suffer if we imposed a delay. And so the reason I'm leaning towards a delay is because I just feel like there's more that could possibly be done to explore possibilities for salvaging this structure. And so that's and I'm normally on these types of cases, I think, very sympathetic, and I am here in this case too, to the needs of the property owner and the hardship that could be suffered. But we're dealing with a contributing property dating back to the 1920s, and it's hard for me to say that we should contemplate the demolition of this property as early as tomorrow. That's where I'm struggling right now.
Mr. Chairman, you articulated my struggle, and I agree. I would have a hard time voting to allow demolition immediately without some more effort to try and find some solutions for this house.
I think also for me, Commissioner Johnson, it does that. I think that was my initial struggle before testimony, that the interior, maybe it could be salvaged. But the problem I have is I don't see anyone working on the exterior of the property and investing funds to do that without also putting investment funds into working on the interior property so that it is habitable. Right now, as it stands, it's, as the specialist said, Courtney, I forgot what company you're with, but Courtney stated that with the heat coming, North Carolina heat coming, all the mold that's growing and continually growing in the property, it could be a potential health risk, public health risk to neighboring properties. I do have a question for the city attorney. Krista, if you're available, I wanted to know what is it that an applicant has to do to prove extreme hardship? Is there something concrete that we need other than, oh, it's going to cost X amount of dollars, but we don't have paperwork? Oh, I don't know how to determine that.
Krista Kruger, City Attorney's Office. There is no definition of that in the statutes or really any guidance that's clear in the law. I think that's really just has to be sort of a balance that the commission explores and weighs. The statute does offer sort of the additional language about the beneficial use of the property, and I do think that that's something else that the commission can take into consideration in evaluating that extreme hardship. And I do know that there was some testimony offered on that. So sorry, I can't offer more clarity in terms of, a formula or something that's kind of a bright line. It's just not in the statute.
Commissioners, this strikes me as analogous to the case we heard a few months ago, that boarding house for nurses from the 1920s across from Watts Hospital, which had the similarities of exterior in decent shape, interior not currently habitable, foundation with water issues, historic contributing property relatively near this one. That one was also asking for a demolition, and we imposed a, if I recall, 3-month delay rather than 365-day delay. And that feels to me like the most analogous case that we've heard during my time on the commission. So I'm going to throw that out as a starting place for conversation on how we might proceed.
Yeah, and I did speak, well, I don't know, just for an example, that particular house wasn't as far as water damage, it wasn't as bad as this particular situation, this our case in front of us. But I did find someone willing to invest in the property if the owner could, they just have to work out the right type of price. And actually, she left a message for me, and I have to call her after this meeting to see what the final result is for that. But yeah, I hear you. And that was a situation where there was an experienced investor that said, yes, it can be done. I think this situation seems a lot different, but we'll see.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Commissioner Johnson? If with that case, some folks from this commission agreed to sort of do a little digging and help figure out what might be possible. Is there interest or capacity to do that in this case?
Oh yes, we are always available to help do some research and digging and reaching out to find potential buyers who might be willing to do the preservation work. We can do that again.
Commissioner Bouchard, right, wrong, or indifferent, I like the idea of a 90-day delay. It's not everything that the applicant wants, and it's probably not nearly as long as Mr. Miller would want. So it would put pressure, I think, on Mr. Miller to really work with this homeowner and with this applicant to figure out if there are alternatives to tearing this project down. Because if we were to approve a 90-day delay and no progress is made, then it comes down in 90 days. And so trying to balance the needs here of both the historic district as well as the property owners, I think it's analogous enough to the project that Commissioner Fieselman has mentioned to warrant strong consideration for a 90-day delay. And I know that as things stand right now, if a motion is made and seconded for no delay, I know I can't support that, but I think I could support a motion calling for a 90-day delay.
Matt, this is Sandy. I agree that some sort of delay is what I'm thinking, and it sounds like where this commission is leaning as a whole. I think a 90-day would be appropriate. Welcome to hear other thoughts from the fellow commissioners.
I'd prefer slightly longer than 90 because I think this is a little more difficult, although I think the real estate market in Durham would support someone who would appreciate that house. So maybe 180, but I agree a year is too long.
I think 90 works for me, especially just giving them the opportunity to look into the stormwater pipe issue and if there is a way to resolve that, because I do think that's kind of external from the precedent we have and throws a wrench into it that's not necessarily just the structure, but the fact that there is this external issue that could continue, like even if they did just fix the structure as is, they need to make sure that that stormwater pipe doesn't continue to flood the work that they do in the future. So it would be good to know if that they have 90 days to get someone out there to look at, other trenching equipment type options that aren't backhoe scale construction.
I have one more question for Mr. Black or Courtney or even Ms. Goyette. Could the water that's sitting in the crawl space start attracting pests like mice and rodents and things of that sort? Is that a problem on that particular side of the street?
I can say that I did get fleas when I went in there. So there are bugs that are living there now. And fleas.
And I'll also say that the basement is completely open. There are there's a window on each side. It's like a brick opening and just cracks, and there are plenty of openings for vermin and pests. I mean, there are no vents. There's nothing stopping like raccoons, cats. I actually spent an entire week trying to get Rick's cat out of the house because she got scared when he was moving out, and I was trying to get his cat back to him, and she was like hanging out down in the basement or the crawl space. I'm sorry. But yes, it's.
So for now, no rodents have actually been coming to your house.
Well, right now it's full of 4 feet of water. So like no animal's going to go in there. But when the water is at a lower level, yes, anything can. And it's a nice place for, rodents and vermin to hang out.
There's plenty of rodents over there.
And also, I just wanted to add that we are not willing to sell the house to anyone. I just want to put that on the table. You have to think about this from our perspective. I'm asking you to empathize with us. We love this house. We bought this house because we wanted it to be our forever home. And we want my dad, who is 75 years old and almost died last year, to live next door to us. He's already started showing signs of, forgetfulness, and we're really worried about him. He's an old guy. I know I'm not supposed to say this, like I've been coached not to say this, but like, I just want to call this out for what it is. Like telling people that they can't, telling people that if they can't, like pour in over $1 million to renovate, possibly over $1 million to restore a house, feels classist and elitist. I mean, and when you think about people who aren't white and who have to deal with historic preservation issues like this, I mean, it's a major issue of inequity that I think the HPC needs to examine. Like, I know I'm not supposed to talk about this because it's not nice and you won't agree with me and it's political, but I just want to call it out for what it is. We have just as much right to be able to buy an investment property that's going to mature and, become a better and better investment. Why should we feel compelled to sell that to somebody richer than us who can afford it? I mean, is that what Durham is all about? I don't think so.
Thank you, Ms. Goyette. Ms. Courtney, did you have anything to add about the potential rodents?
Yes, I was going to say that rodents you might not be able to see them right now because, as she said, there's a lot of water in the crawl space. So they may be hiding out in there and not be able to be detected, but the water does attract other vermin into the wood. It makes it more easily chewable and able for them to come live inside of the wood. So they are very attracted to water.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other discussion, or does someone have, well, I suppose what we should do before we entertain a motion is see if there's a staff recommendation, but I don't want to cut off conversation prematurely. Is there anything else that folks believe needs to be said before we ask for a staff recommendation?
I would like to say one more thing if I can. as far as an investor goes, in my experience, once you start bringing up fungal growth, water damage and fungal growth are two very different areas. Fungal growth does come along with water damage, but they're not always together. When you start trying to get an investor to invest in a property with fungal growth, it becomes very difficult, especially in this situation, because they're likely trying to then sell the house as a habitable, livable house. And you then have to disclose the fungal growth, and you have to disclose tests that pass a microbiological examination. If you don't pass, or if you have a future problem that can be tied to that investor, it then brings in many, many legal complications for them. So finding an investor is going to be incredibly difficult given the prolific fungal growth found in this home, which once we start tearing the building apart, it could be even worse than what we see from the naked eye. My job isn't to tear apart I don't uncover anything in the home. I only see what's on the surface. There is plenty of fungal growth that could be occurring on the other side of the walls that we don't know about yet. So it could be a way bigger issue than we even see right now. And prolonging it too far could mean that something that was salvageable today or tomorrow is not within the next few days. Fungal growth can become an issue within just hours.
Okay. I'm going to reclose the public hearing and once again ask commissioners if Commissioner Fieselman.
Yeah, can I ask Commissioner DeBerry to speak a little bit to 90 days versus 180? Where's your thinking at this point?
You know, the Broad Street property that we considered a time or two ago, it appears that 90 days maybe allowed it to, you know, find a new life. I think this house has maybe more problems, and it may take a little longer. I think it's a compromise not to do the full 365, and 180 would just give everybody a little chance maybe to take a breath and look for some other answers. I'm not convinced that this house is not salvageable, and you know, if a few more days would help in that process. As Matt said, we're the Historic Preservation Commission, and we're supposed to help, you know, maintain these historic districts. And so if an additional 60 days would help, 90 days would help, I think we should do that.
How do other commissioners feel about potential 180-day delay?
I feel like based on the testimony that Courtney has presented, I get nervous about, you know, continuing to impose longer and longer delays. I think it's hard because it is like 90 days is, you know, during no normal non-COVID times, plenty of time. But I understand that like during these days, it might take longer to get responses from different entities. But I just, if there's a chance this fungal growth is going to get worse over 180 days and make things that maybe could have been salvaged. Well, I guess, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not proposing to salvage anything, so I don't know that that really actually matters. But there is also the public health issue. I don't know. I lean towards, you know, 3 months more than 6 months, just knowing. I think you can get contractors in 3 months. I don't think going to 6 months is going to change who you get from at the end of the day. It might, you know, 6 months might be that they have time to work out, you know, with a contractor what they're doing, but if they decide to go that route, they would have that time in 90 days to have made that connection. I don't know. I'm not saying anything. Never mind. Just
It's okay. You're just thinking aloud.
It's tough.
But I think Ms. Goyette just mentioned that she has no intention on even entertaining the idea of selling the property to an investor. So now that brings back to question the reason why we were even considering the delay is that so that we can look into maybe potential new owner willing to do the preservation work. And so I don't know, what do the rest of the commission think about that? If that's not on the table, what do we, why would we consider it?
Well, this is Chair Bouchard. I didn't understand that to be the only reason why we'd impose a delay. I mean, if there are other options that could be explored, and I don't necessarily presume to know what those options might be, I'd like to give Mr. Miller or others who might be interested in preserving this property an opportunity to figure out a way to work collaboratively with the property owner and the applicant to see if something's possible. And it could very well be that nothing is possible. And so to my mind, it becomes what's an appropriate amount of time to allow that process, however it might unfold and whatever might result from it, to transpire. And so I think 180 is a little bit too long. I could be convinced that 120 is appropriate. So, pre-COVID times, I'd probably say 90 days is plenty of time. And because of COVID, I'll add 33% and say I could support 120, but I'm not sure I could go much further than that in trying to balance everybody's interests here.
I mean, I'm also looking at the spirit of the applicant. I don't envision that she's right now looking to make any other. I think it seems like she felt that she spent the time investigating herself. Unless we come up with other options for the delay, I don't see the purpose of a 180, 120, maybe a 90. But I just think I feel like right now my main concern is water damage. It's just a different type of animal. And it seems as though it's been sitting there for a while. The whole house is molded. And it's just gonna get bad over the summer and start to attract things, snakes and things to the neighbors. But I feel like unless the last situation, the owners were willing to work with us. They were, even when I called them, they were just very open. And I don't get the same impression with this particular applicant. That's just where I'm going with that. I'm all for doing all we can to save the property, but there has to be willingness on both ends to come to some type of agreement. And the last month, that applicant was extremely willing to work with us. They were very open.
Chair Bouchard here. I am getting a sense from what I'm hearing from this conversation that there is sufficient support for a 90-day delay on this board. But we may not have sufficient support for a delay of longer than that. And so unless there's additional conversation, I would go ahead and ask for a staff recommendation before entertaining a motion.
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. Staff would recommend a 90-day delay for the approval of this application.
I'm willing to make a motion.
Thank you.
All right. The Durham Historic Preservation finds that in case COA 21-00013, 2207 Englewood Avenue, demolition of the primary structure, the applicant is proposing to demolish a contributing structure dating from the late 1920s. The commission has determined that there is sufficient historical value to the structure. And the commission has determined that the property owner has not shown, has shown evidence of hardship in keeping the structure. And once demolished, the site will be stabilized with grass seed and straw. So therefore, in accordance with UDO requirements and NCGS 160D 949, the COA for the proposed demolition is approved with a 90-day delay.
Second.
I'll do roll call. Chair Broussard,
Approved.
Commissioner DeBerry,
No.
Commissioner Fieselman,
Approved.
Vice Chair Goolsby,
Approved.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson,
Approved.
and I don't know, I think Commissioner Waiters is not on here anymore.
Yeah, she needed to leave in the middle of this hearing. I want to thank everybody for your patience, for your testimony. This was one of the toughest matters that I've confronted since being on this commission. There were no easy answers here. And perhaps everyone's going to leave not particularly happy with what we've done. But to the extent there's an opportunity here for additional conversation, I hope the parties will have it, and we'll see where things lead from there. But thank you again for your time, your energy, your patience, and your testimony today. If I could invoke the chair privilege for a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back and hear our last two cases. We can come back, let's say at 11:55.
Terry, are you there? Can I ask a just administrative question?
Yeah, I'm here.
What's the scoop on paper packets in the mail? Are those happening and mine just didn't come 2 months in a row, or did we stop doing them?
No, I don't know if I had you on. Have you been getting them?
I did get them the first months I was on the commission, but then I did not get them the last 2 months.
Okay, I'll make sure you get them next month.
Okay, thanks. I can send you my address if you need it.
I've got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Terry.
I'll make sure I get it to you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
It would appear we are waiting for Tad to return. There's Tad. And here's Carla. Terrific. All right, I think the band's back together. So let us move forward with case COA 2100014, 162 West Ramsar Street, new construction. Before we hear from staff, is there any one of our commissioners who may have a conflict of interest in hearing this case outside of what Commissioner Hamilton disclosed earlier today? Hearing none, then let us please proceed with the swearing in of anyone who plans to speak for or against the case.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceeding for today's case is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
I do.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
I do.
So welcome, Mr. Harmon, Mr. Arneson, and Ms. Young. Are you here to speak for or against the proposal? Just so I realize who we have here today.
We're speaking in favor. We're part of the application.
Okay.
Yes, proponent for and a part of the design team.
Wonderful. So all three of you are here for. That's helpful to know. Thank you very much. And I need a verbal response from each one of you to this question. Do you all consent to this hearing being conducted this morning through this remote platform?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
I do.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And with that, we may proceed with the staff summary.
Carla, you're muted.
I apologize. This is KCOA 21-00014, 162 West Ramsar Street, new construction. The applicant is Built Form in collaboration with Center Studio Architecture. The owner is Crest 1933 LLC. It's located in the northwest quadrant of the intersection of Ramsar Street and Mangum. I apologize, that got left out. It's zoned downtown design core, and it is a non-contributing parcel in the downtown Durham Historic District. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 6-story mixed-use structure on the site. It's currently a surface parking lot, and it will be attached to the Crest Building, which is a landmark. I would like to introduce the staff report into the record and invite the applicant to present their case.
Good morning. My name is David Arneson. I'm a partner at Center Studio Architecture. We have Scott Harmon, my business partner, and Ashley Young from Built Form. Just to give a little bit of clarity about who we are and our roles. Scott and I are partners in Center Studio Architecture and also partners in Revamp Durham, a real estate investment company. We're partners on the ownership side and development side, excuse me, for this project. So we're each wearing legally a couple of hats because we have ownership stake as well as being on the design team. But in terms of how we work today and how we present ourselves, I'll be wearing the architect hat and Scott will be wearing the developer hat. CSA is the design architect on the project, and Built Form is the architect of record and collaborating with us on the design of the building. Ashley Young has built the model of the building and has the most technical expertise and knowledge about the project. So while we're all here to answer questions, Ashley will probably have the most technical expertise about the project. As you can see in the staff report, the site is currently a vacant surface parking lot. This is immediately south of the Crest building. It's the northwest corner of South Mangum Street and East Ramsar Street. And our proposal is to put a 6-story building on the parcel. It's a very small parcel, a challenging parcel to try and put pretty much anything on, but we think we have a solution. Parking is one of the main issues, as I'm sure you're all aware, for any kind of development. And we have an innovative parking solution for this building that includes a stacked mechanical lift system that will accommodate, I believe it's 24 cars. And then we have one surface parking lot for our ADA, not a surface lot, but within the building we have an ADA parking space. But that's our existing conditions survey showing the surface parking lot as it exists, with a couple of small brick walls on the property. And there's a bus station at the southern corner, kind of southwest corner. The building that we're proposing is 6 stories tall. The ground floor is concrete structure. It has retail space that we would rent to commercial or retail tenant in an L-shaped configuration facing the 2 streets, South Mangum and East Ramsar. That L shape encloses and conceals from view the stacked parking structure, which is accessed from an alley on the west property line, adjacent to surface parking lot 20. And on top of that, we have 5 stories of wood frame structure that house, I believe we have 26 residential condominiums. They are various sizes and configurations. But you can see here on the elevation from Mangum Street, the adjacency to the historic Crest building to the right on the drawing there. And you can see how our ground floor has a storefront, aluminum and glass storefront, almost entirely glass, as much glass as possible. We have incorporated the bus shelter into the design of our building on the ground floor. That's in the bottom left of the drawing there, 10-foot 3.5 in the kind of gold orange tone there is a recessed niche essentially in the facade of our building. We have a combination of gray stucco material, EIFS exterior insulation finish system, and some horizontal fiber cement panel siding, also in the orange color, and then vinyl windows and doors for the residential units on the upper 5 floors. The top floor of the building is set back 10 feet from the main facade of the building. You can see that where it says FCP-1, that whole facade is set 10 feet back from the main gray facade, which is parallel the Crest building. We have balconies on primarily the corners of the building. Where our building is adjacent to the Crest building, we have a row of balconies. Those are also, the main facade of the building is recessed, revealing the corner of the Crest building. The balconies themselves project forward slightly. At the ground floor, which is the residential entry into the condominium building, that facade is also recessed, revealing the corner of the historic Crest building. If we take a look at the next sheet, that should be the south facade. This is facing the DPAC. We're essentially right across Ramseur and the railroad tracks from the Performing Arts Center. And you can see we have a combination of materials there, 2 colors of gray stucco. They're both exterior insulation finish system. The kind of orange color is the horizontal fiber cement painted product. And then a bunch of vinyl windows. And one thing I should bring up is that in our conversation today, we're hoping to get as much feedback from the commission as we can. We'd also like to say that we're requesting a continuation of the public hearing until next month. We are in the process of getting pricing on this building, and we know there's going to be some value engineering exercises, and there will probably be some modifications in some geometry and some materials, particularly the height of the first floor. You can see that in our current design, we have the first floor to second floor quite tall, 20 foot 11 inches. That is primarily to accommodate the parking, stacked parking mechanism. We're looking at 2 different vendors who may provide that system for us. And one of them would involve a pit that would accommodate more cars underground. And so the height of the mechanism wouldn't need to be so tall. So we're anticipating that we might be able to lower the whole wood part of the building, floors 2 through 6, by approximately 4 feet. And that would obviously affect the design of the ground floor storefront and the height of the overall building. So we know there's going to be some changes, but we wanted to get this in front of you and have a conversation about it and bring up any relevant issues for the commission so that we can address all of those when we reconvene next month. There's a lot of data in our presentation. We've got a rather detailed model and 2-dimensional drawings as well as perspective views. So I'm sure you've looked through them all. I don't know that I need to go through it in a whole lot of detail right now, but we're certainly happy to answer any questions you might have at this time. I think one issue I would like to bring up, since it's in the staff report, is I would direct your attention to page 3 of the report, section 4, materials, B, the bottom one, the criterion. Obviously, this is a non-contributing structure since it's a brand new structure. It says it is not appropriate to install a hollow profile siding or trim, and then the analysis refers to the proposed vinyl windows do not appear to meet this criterion. When we designed the building, we were certainly aware that we would be proposing vinyl windows. Our reading of the guidelines was that that criterion wouldn't apply to the window because it specifically says hollow profile siding or trim. And we understood that a window wouldn't fall in that criterion, but fall into one of the criterion above, modern equivalent material. So we just want to ask for more clarity on that point. And with that, I think we'd like to hear whatever questions or comments you may have for us.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Mr. Arneson. Commissioners, any questions? Tad, I think you want to speak, but you're on mute.
Hi, this is Mr. DeBerry. I just have a couple of questions, and they probably do not reflect whether there'll be approval or not, but they're personal questions. One, what is the, or what are the fire suppression apparatus in this building?
It'll be a fully sprinklered building. We have multifamily residential. So by code, we're required to have a sprinkler system. We also have this kind of construction is typically referred to as podium construction, where the ground floor concrete structure has a concrete slab at the second floor level that separates the residential units from the retail and garage space. It's a quite common multifamily construction technique. So I can't remember if that's a 2-hour or a 3-hour separation at the second floor level.
Yeah, that is a 3-hour here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, my main concern is less fire from the bottom, but what happens if the upper floors catch fire? What happens to the crest building? I assume there's a firewall there as well.
Correct. Yeah, the crest building is already has a masonry wall. We are building our building with our stairs and elevator adjacent to it, and those are all rated concrete block shafts. So there's a relatively small area where one of the residential units is adjacent, but we have technically not a party wall. We have two separate walls, the crest wall and our wall, both of which are rated.
Okay. And then I just have two comments that are, again, purely personal. One is that I wish there was something in the outer components of this building that had some sort of recognition of the crest building. I don't know whether it was some blonde brick or some terracotta or something, which leads me to my next comment. We've approved a number of projects similar to this in the downtown design district. And my feeling is that they all have a similar look, and there's just a lot of it. And, you know, down the road, is this going to be the stuff that developers come to us and say, yeah, we're going to take it down because it doesn't have any architectural significance, because there's 15 others in the district? And again, that's just a personal comment.
So as a person who works in the Crest building every day, I appreciate the fire question, because as Carla can tell you, our fire alarms go off on a regular basis already. And I also don't want to burn up, but I do appreciate that the horizontal datum of the base does seem to pull off of the existing like exposed basement there, you know, where the entry to the barcade is. I feel like you're kind of maintaining that horizontal datum with your 19-foot tall base. It would be nice to see a similar continuation of the datum lines further up the facade with the Crest building through some sort of more material articulation or something along those lines. Because right now it is kind of like your base stays in line with the crests. And then, I mean, I understand like floor to flat floors and how marketing goes. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that, your actual floor to floors are the same, but there was a way to like kind of just continue those upper floor datum the same way you did the base. It would, I think, help it feel more cohesive along that streetscape, kind of how like on Main Street you see all these different storefronts, and you look at one city center, and it kind of tried to keep some of that, which obviously is part of what the design district guidelines with the podium heights are trying to instill. So I would say that, and all right, so before you come back, have you gotten this bus stop approved through transportation?
I can speak to that. So we've gone through our first site plan approval. So we did receive comments from both our UDO requirements and transportation. So those comments have been addressed, and yes, we comply currently with their design criteria.
Okay, sorry. I just know whenever I've had to do bus stops, there are these very regulated things, but I guess it's cool that you can do it that way. I mean, Andy, did you have any thoughts as the architect on the board?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a couple clarifying questions and in things that in the questions I've heard so far may be helpful. One, I know you guys have been, sounds like you've been through your pre-submittal. In talking with the historic preservation staff, did you guys come to an agreement on what the podium height would be and the step back? Because I see the 10-foot step back for the UDO, but the preservation, I think we have a 15-foot, or, well, excuse me, let me just read it. Massing above the podium to step back at least 15 feet or sufficiently to preserve continuity of the block face. So I didn't quite see that in the package.
I have to say I'm not familiar with that. We were trying to work with the height and block face of the crest building. So if you could, I'm not sure who's in charge of the slideshow, but if we could get to the 3D images from our model, that might help to show how the gray part of our building on Mangum is similar in height to the crest building and then steps back on the top floor. And
yeah, I see those pieces in here. I'm just trying to associate it with the actual criteria. Sometimes when we get these multifamily buildings or any building really in the downtown, we see an established podium height for that block face. And then how does the new building relate to that?
Mm-hmm.
That would just be helpful for your updates if you could clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're sort of taking this stance, and you can see, especially in that center image, that we are a sufficient setback for the block face here, as opposed to the 15 feet. And
Give me 1 second. I did have another question here. Find it. Oh, I do see it at your stairwell where it meets with the Crest building. You are stepping back the exterior walls, but the balconies are projecting. So if you could just give some more clarity or reasoning of why the balconies would project past the Crest building. It's my opinion that that starts to impact the view of the Crest building. And again, the criteria tries to push away obstructing views of historic properties.
Sure. Well, excuse me, we definitely wanted to give those buyers of those residential units a balcony that gave them a view up and down Mangum Street as opposed to a completely recessed balcony. And also the site is so tiny that we were trying to use it effectively. We felt we had a good compromise by having the facade of the building, the thermal envelope, pushed back so that we could reveal the corner of Crest in this middle view here, and that the balconies are relatively thin and have a transparent guardrail on them. So that historic fabric of the Crest building is all revealed, and there's just a thin layer of balcony adjacent to it.
When you talk about the guardrail, is it aluminum with, say, picket or rail, or is it, you talking about glass?
We currently have glass in the design. That's one of the elements we're looking at in terms of the budget, but our original design intention is to have a glass railing.
And my last bit of clarification, I think for your next submission, it just seems like there's a lot of materials or material changes for me. When I think about the district and buildings, I don't see as many material changes. So I know there's EFIS and there's the fiber cement siding and the aluminum curtain wall, or excuse me, the window wall. But then also the EFIS in itself, from my understanding, changes color. So I just think that, when I think about buildings downtown, there's not so many materials or material changes in the elevations.
Wondering if you can speak to how the new proposed building articulates with the side of the historic Crest building and what's on that side that's going to have this building right next to it. And is there any conversation between those two things, or are they just two walls up against each other?
I want to make sure I'm understanding the question right. Are you referring to the facade design of our building relative to the Crest facade?
No, I'm talking about the wall of the Crest building that's going to have this building sandwiched up against it.
I think we've got an image, might be helpful to pull up the existing image. You could probably go back another page or two. That's a good example there.
Okay, so there's not any windows on the existing Crest building.
Correct, not where we'll be touching. The windows that are on the west side of Crest will not be covered by our building. The floor plan shows how that step back works. Do I have that right, Ashley?
That's correct. And Laura, that was also previously a party wall. So even historically, that was not really a facade that has been visible with the various structures that have been there previously.
the Crest building has its, you can see in the plan at the top corner, has its exit door and some stairs coming out. And so that's all being preserved. And the windows, the two windows that stack on the floors above occur in that corner.
Got it. Thank you.
This is Chair Bouchard. I would like to get, if possible, clarification from Carla in response to the observation you made, Mr. Arneson, about the materials for windows and doors. Carla, I just wanted to see whether or not you are construing 4B, referencing hollow profile siding or trim, to also include windows and sliding doors.
For planning department. So windows also have trim. That trim, wouldn't need to not be hollow profile. We have as precedents set that we don't allow hollow profile. So you would be setting a new precedent for this particular project if you wanted to move forward with vinyl. If you look around downtown, I don't see, because criterion C is a durable modern material deemed compatible. I do not believe that it meets that criterion.
Okay.
May I reply?
Sure.
The historic guidelines, they're not in this, the complete document is not in this report, but where it's pulled from on page 67 of local review criteria, new structures, there happens to be a photo on that page of, and the caption says new infill construction in the downtown district. The building that is in that photograph is the Church and Main building on East Main Street near the old courthouse. It's a 6-story building. That's a project that CSA designed a number of years ago and was approved by the commission. And that building has punch windows in it. The approved window was Anderson 100 series window, which is a hollow profile, happens to be a brand name by Anderson called Fibrex. It's 40% wood fibers and 60% vinyl, but it's a very, very similar product in that it's a vinyl exterior and it's a hollow profile window frame. We don't have any trim on those windows, and we're not proposing any trim on these windows for this building. But this was part of our mindset that we've done this before in downtown in the historic district and used a nearly identical product, hollow profile window with vinyl and no trim.
So Mr. Anderson, Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department, I did go back and look at that COA. I didn't see any cut sheets included in that approved COA. But I did note that you had requested all of the windows to be replaced by the manufacturer just a couple years later. So I'm wondering, would you call that a durable product?
Not the Anderson 100, but the Anderson 400 that it was replaced with was. And we've used these similar vinyl windows. There's a number of manufacturers who make them, and we've put them in a lot of products in downtown, in and around downtown. Some of those aren't in the historic district, but.
Well, I do want to clarify that they did not get specifically approved by the commission, and that was under previous criteria as well.
Okay.
What would be the alternatives, Mr. Arneson, to using hollow profile windows and door products?
There are a couple of options. We could go with an aluminum clad wood window. We could go with a solid PVC window. those are probably the two main options we would consider.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else?
The art will come in under a separate COA, right, Carla?
Yes, because they have not been provided. It hasn't been provided. It looks like they marked a space for it, but no particular proposal, materials, etc., has been proposed.
There's no.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry,
please.
in regards to that. With the separate COA for the art, we will have some form of signage as well included on this project when we go for construction. Would we issue a COA that would include the signage and the art together? Would we be able to do that as a single?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. Yes, you could include those together, but if your signage exceeded 24 square feet, for instance, it would reach the major level, whereas maybe your mural, since it's on a non-contributing surface, might not require commission review. So that's something to think about.
Okay, thank you so much.
I don't want to prematurely cut off conversation, but it sounds to me as if the applicant is actively seeking a continuance to this case. And if there's no further input that we can provide the applicant, I'm prepared to move. Anyone else? Okay, with respect then to case COA 2100014, it is hereby moved that this case be continued to the May 4, 2021 meeting of this commission.
Second.
And Ms. Elliott? Yeah, you're somehow muted, Terry.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. Chair Broussard,
Approved.
Commissioner DeBerry, Commissioner DeBerry,
Yes.
Commissioner Fieselman,
Approved.
Vice Chair Goolsby,
Approved.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson.
Approved.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you all very much. Good luck with the further revisions and value engineering, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you all.
We will now hear our final case of the day. It is COA 2100015, 805 Yancey Street, demolition of primary structure. It looks like we're in the process of getting our speakers in. Good to see you again. If we could have all of our witnesses sworn in. Ms. Elliott?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the public hearing proceeding for today's case is the truth by your own knowledge or by information and belief?
I do.
And Ms. Lockerman, are you consenting to having your case heard today via this remote platform?
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you for that. If we could have a staff summary, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I did forget to ask one question. Any commissioners who would have a conflict of interest hearing this case today? It appears we're good. We'll move on with our staff report.
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. This is case COA 2100015, 805 Yancey Street, demolition of a primary structure. The applicant is 4/1 Design, represented by Sarah Lackenman. The owner is West 4th LLC. It's located on the south side of Yancey Street between Arnett Avenue and Shepard Street, zoned residential urban duplex, and it's a non-contributing parcel within the Morehead Hill Historic District. So I'd like to introduce this staff report into the record and invite Ms. Lockenman to present her case.
Hello, everybody. You guys have been in the marathon today, and hopefully this one will be short and sweet. I talked to you guys last month about the quadruplex that is just to the east of the structure, and originally the applicant, or the West 4th, were planning on letting this one stand a little bit longer before they replaced it with something that was part of the grouping of new infill. And as we've moved along in the process, they've decided to go ahead and take this one down so they can do the construction of the proposal of all the new buildings at once. So this is a duplex. It was built in '78. It's not in particularly great shape and it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. They will be replacing it with multifamily. The site plan, I think, is still a little bit in flux from the one that I approved, but they're going to be using this lot, which goes quite deep into the neighborhood, to get the adjoining lots to be the right size for the buildings that they want to put on. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but I think it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, there you go.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for our applicant today? It would appear that there are no questions.
Everybody's too worn out from earlier. It's okay.
I will ask for the record if there is anyone here to speak in opposition to the COA application, and seeing none, we can close the public hearing and move on to commission discussion. Carla, I'll ask you the same question I ask with respect to demolition projects like this, just for my own confirmation. Would it be fair to presume that you don't see any special significance or value in maintaining the character of this district by imposing any sort of delay and seeing if this property is reusable or salvageable?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. Yeah, based on its year of construction and the fact that it's not listed in the inventory of the local historic district or the National Register district, I would say it does not.
Anything architecturally significant about it?
Simple gable roof structure, modern masonry, no.
Great, thank you. With that, do we have a staff recommendation?
Carla Rosenberg, Planning Department. Staff would recommend approval of the application without a 365-day delay.
I'll go ahead and move to close this up. The Durham Historic Preservation Commission finds that in the case COA 21-00015, 805 Yancey Street, demolition of primary structure, the applicant is proposing to demolish a non-contributing multifamily structure dating from the 1970s. The commission has determined that the structure lacks sufficient historical value or structural integrity to preserve it. The site will be stabilized with grass seed and straw following the demolition until further developed. Therefore, in accordance with UDO requirements in North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D, Section 949, the COA for the proposed demolition is approved without a delay.
Second.
Andy Goldsby, second.
Okay, Chair Broussard,
Approved.
Commissioner DeBerry,
Approved.
Commissioner Fieselman,
Approved.
Vice Chair Goldsby,
Approved.
Chair Commissioner Hamilton,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson.
Approved.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You called it short and sweet.
On the minutes.
Yes.
I think what was wrong is just that the members present, I didn't change the chair and the vice chair, so I will fix that if y'all want to vote on that. Everything else looked fine.
Does everyone have access to the minutes?
The minutes I received. Let's see. Let me make sure I got the right ones here.
It looks like the ones now are not wrong anymore.
Well, I think it's because we voted in the new chair that particular month. So it starts off, is that what we're talking about? On the first page?
Yeah.
Chair, okay. Chair Hamilton did call the meeting to order. And we voted, yeah, at the new business. That was new business.
I wasn't chair at the last meeting, was I?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
When I click the link, I get a March 2, 2021 set of draft minutes where the call to order is by me.
Yes, it's been changed since the last time I looked at it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at February. You're right. Okay.
That was in February.
Okay.
Krista, would there be anything out of line if we were to hold off on voting on these minutes until the next meeting, just to be sure everyone has a updated set and a chance to review them?
This is Krista Kukar, City Attorney's Office. That is totally fine if you want to wait to vote on them. You don't need to take any action. They would just sort of linger on the agenda and be on there for next month. So that's acceptable.
Okay. That's my recommendation.
Sounds good.
New business, minor COAs.
Again, I will email those out after the meeting.
Thank y'all very much for hanging in there. Look, it's 12:41. This was a long meeting. I am open to feedback / criticism, whether you want to give it now or later, about how long this ran, particularly the demolition case. I realized that went on far too long, and I probably should have been more assertive in cutting people off. So
Yes, what's the process for limiting speaking time in these cases? Like, is there a way that we can?
Yeah, so in the past, when we've had many opponents and proponents, we've limited it to 2 minutes. But I think in this case, we really didn't have a whole lot of people presenting. We just had long-winded presenters. And so I think really honing in on what the actual criteria is, making sure that it's material evidence.
Yeah.
There was a lot provided that was not really relevant, although maybe it helped to set up that, extreme hardship, but really, I think really outlining those 3 criteria from the statute would have been helpful from the beginning.
Okay. And trying to get folks to address those.
Right.
Yeah, there was way too much emotion. And
I will tell you that this is only the beginning, and so knowing this for next hearing would be great.
Okay.
To do that for next hearing. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I chime in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Krista Kukar, City Attorney's Office. I agree with what Carla said. I think, the standard for review, upon appeal, for example, was there substantial competent material evidence to support the decision? And so that's really what the board needs to be considering is it substantial? Is it sort of a significant weight? Is it competent? Is someone presenting it who has the information to present it? And is it material? Is it relevant? And so I think, keeping that in mind, I think can often help to narrow the scope of the conversation. The Board of Adjustment often does limit speakers' time, and that's within the chair's purview to do that. And so you could do it, you know, sometimes they do it where applicants get a little bit more time because obviously they have the burden of proof, and opponents get a little less time depending on how many there are. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, I know that Commissioner Johnson asked about extreme hardship during the meeting. I think it's unfortunate in a way that that's not really articulated in the statutes. I think that it, you know, I was researching while you all were discussing, not really coming up with anything in terms of case law that discusses that principle, and came across a School of Government article that describes that flexibility that you all have as a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think I'll work with staff to see if we can come up with some ideas which could guide that, guide decision-making on that. It wouldn't be sort of binding because it's not statutory, but could help you all get through that concept.
That's great. Very helpful. All these comments are really helpful. I need to be a little bit more assertive as chair. That's what I learned from that hearing.
Thank you.
I understand.
For serving as chair and for guiding us through. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and I saw it as you seeing that it was an emotional situation for the applicant, and so you give them time to say their piece. I wonder also, is it possible? Do staff get a chance? Well, at least for the applicant, maybe not for regular community members coming in. Does staff have an opportunity to really talk to them about, okay, when you're presenting, be sure you keep with material evidence, and stick to that so that we keep it going? Do you have a chance to kind of coach them?
Yeah, so I did have a pre-submittal meeting with John Black, and I think he was well versed in what needed to be presented, and is the reason I think certain witnesses were there that were, and so yeah, and I think yeah, it sounded like some other coaching had gone on as well. But yes, I do definitely talk with the applicants about what would be helpful for you all in bringing, you know, expert testimony and not just depending on hearsay, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right.
A little bit of clarification. I know that the Board of Adjustments, the phrase that I'm often familiar with is burden of proof. I mean, is that what we're looking at here when we're weighing it against hardships and et cetera, is material that shows a burden of proof that these are certainly a hardship for the applicant?
Krista Kukra, City Attorney's Office. I mean, right. So the standard by which you're judging it is a little bit different. That is true. But the applicant still has a burden of showing that they have met the criteria, or that if they aren't going to meet the criteria, that they somehow, that there's a justification for that. So whatever the standards are, the applicant does need to demonstrate either compliance or a good reason for the board to make the decision that the applicant is requesting. And in the instance of extreme hardship, that burden would be on them to show what that is.
It's hard for me to determine extreme hardship for a structure that was fairly recently purchased and the owners knew they were in a historic district. And clearly they had all this background. They knew there would be a contentious hearing. So in this case, I had a hard time getting there. I can understand if people are living in a home in a district and they need to do some repairs and they need to come to us to do that. There could be a hardship, but in this case, I had a hard time getting there simply because of the circumstances around that house.
Carla, how are we looking for next month? It sounds like we might have another busy docket.
It's not a busy docket. I think we have two cases that are related. Actually, we have demolition, new construction on the same lot. And then we also have an add-on that I literally came in last night that we're fast tracking. So
okay, great. Plus case 14 from earlier today, right?
Right.
So it looks like 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Everyone, thank you so much for hanging in there. It was a marathon, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Have
Matt.
a great
Bye.
month. See you in May.
Thanks.